We'll call the regular meeting in the New Ulm City Council for July 19, 2016, 5 p.m. to order. First items on the agenda is your consent agenda items. What's your wishes?
I'll offer a motion to approve them.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items. Any discussion on any? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. At this time, we're going to get away from the agenda a little bit here. We got John Burmeister here, and I would like to have him step up and make his presentation. So we're going to take items, excuse me, 3B, 5B, and 5C, John. And we'll let you hit the road.
All right, very good. 3B. All right, so let's talk about the local option sales tax.
Yay!
Then we'll talk about the bonds thereafter. So if you'd like to, I think on your screen you should have the presentation there in front of you, and I think they'll also put it up on this big screen here for folks as well. So let me know when that. Oops. Now we're going to test my capabilities here. Restart. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes just kind of refreshing everyone's memory about what we ended up doing. You may recall back in 2000, it's been 16 years now, we did pass our first local option sales tax vote here, and we started collecting in April of 2001. And then back in 2001 and 2002, the city did borrow some funds to finance the projects, and we ended up selling $7.5 million in 2001, and we borrowed at a whopping 4.7%, really high interest rates relative to today. And then we followed up with another smaller issue in 2002 at a 4.7%. And just to refresh everyone's memory, we used $9 million of those proceeds, as well as some money the city had on hand of $3.5 million to facilitate the construction of those projects. And so all of those have been very successful. We currently today have the 2009 series. We took the 2009 bonds, and we were fortunate back in 2009 to take the proceeds of those bonds and pay off the 2001 and 2002 bonds. And if you recall, the city ended up saving $588,000 of present value savings at that time. You can see on this chart, it's really hard to read, is there's $3,245,000 still outstanding, and the final maturity is December of 20, and we certainly have that we reserved the right to call these in on December of 2017. So when we hit that call date after we make the December of 17 payment, there'll be $2,030,000 of par amount left outstanding. So with these bonds, we obviously want to make sure we can pay these bonds before we move on and do anything else. So we kind of came up with here for you 3 different options. And the first option is just to continue to let the 2009 bonds pay those as we go, still continue to collect the sales tax increment 2017, 18, 19, and 20, and make those payments, and then also use any excess to build up a reserve. So that was kind of our what we came up with, option 1. The second option was well, maybe we should take some of the reserves that we've built up from the collection of this over the last 16 years, use those reserves, pay off the 2009 bonds, freeing up that debt payment or the current receipts that we're getting now, and sell new bonds and facilitate new projects. And we could do that roughly right around in 2017, which is kind of in line with where we think your timeline is if you go to legislature and get the referendum here in the community. And then the third option is just to simultaneously refund the bonds and sell new bonds at the same time. So that was kind of the third option. This next slide here shows you what the collection of the sales tax have been. I don't know what color that is. It's a pink on my screen, maybe an orange up on the big screen there. You can see what that.
In option number 3, refund, sell at the same time, and keep the reserve.
Mm-hmm. And then let's see. I have that summarized in the back here. It's way in the back. Yeah, option 3 was not keep the reserve, just basically pay off the bonds and then use the money to spend it on all new projects. So that was option 3. And I have a summary here that I'll walk you through here in a bit. So you can see the kind of the orange there, that's been the payment of the debt, and you can see that little bit of a dip there in 2009. That's the savings from the refunding that we did. And over the last 16 years, you can see that the city has continued via inflation and better economic development here, and economic growth here in the community. The sales tax has continued to grow. And in fact, it even went above $1.2 million there in 2014 with a small dip below 1.2 million in 2015. And Reg, I think year to date we're hovering real close to 2015 levels, if not a little bit better. So we're seeing real good continued growth in 2016 as well. This was a laundry list of the projects that the committee had been discussing. I know Roger and Brian and Reg have been visiting with the city's bond council. They have been vetting those projects. Can we spend bond proceeds on that? Is it a legal authorization of the sales tax referendum? Are there what's called private use issues related to if it isn't public purpose only? The IRS has concerns about that, so we have to make sure we're meeting all of the IRS standards and those types of things. And I know Roger can do a better job explaining all of that than I can, but those have been fully vetted, and the projects that you do undertake will have met all of those different issues going forward. So this was option one again. You can see we're going to, as I mentioned, just let the sales tax continue to collect. We would collect that through December of 20, continuing to pay the debt off, and then build up a reserve. The second one here, we would take the reserves, pay off the 2009 bonds, and then sell new bonds and then fund our new projects. And the advantage of that is we can do the projects in 17 and not wait all the way to 2020. The disadvantage is you're now taking 3 years of annual collections, and you're not collecting those 3 years. You're actually shortening the timeline of the sales tax, if that makes sense, from what that would be 23 years to 20 years. So you're losing those 3 years of time through the bond, and so that allows you to build up less of a reserve over time. And then here's the option of just issue new bonds and then use the monies to fund the sales tax collections. I have a whole bunch of analyses and little numbers in here, and I will try not to bore you with those. I want to get you to this page because this summarizes them side by side. So here's option one. We would wait until 2020. We would then, at that point, have all the bonds paid off. We would then, and I have very conservative interest rates, as you guys have probably have seen relative to where they're at today. But we think we can sell about almost $14.2 million worth of bonds at that time. We'd have a 20-year life on them. We think we could get almost $14 million of proceeds from that bond issue. And because we've collected the sales tax for 3 more years, we think we would have $4.8 million in that reserve to take care of the existing facilities for any future major capital needs that they had for their remaining life. And then we believe that there's $800,000 worth of projects that are coming up, so we wanted to reserve funds for those needs because we think we'll have to do those at some point. You can see there in option 2, this is where we would sell the bonds in 2017, so 3 years earlier. We're selling approximately the same amount of bonds. We'd still have the 20-year life again. And you can see that the construction proceeds would be a little over $14.5 million. And then here's kind of the cash reserve would be less because we didn't collect those monies over the remaining 3 years. And of course we would spend the $800,000 there again. And then the third option is really I kind of consider one side of the continuum where we paid off the old bonds, sold our new bonds for 20 years, and used every dime we could on projects. Because if you remember that list of projects we had, there's $30 million of projects. So I know a lot of folks want to do a lot of projects. So this was kind of an extreme situation where let's take all the money we can get and use it for future projects. And then also reserve the $800,000. Through a real good, vibrant discussion with the committee, we did discuss an option 4, and I have that written down, and you guys don't have that in yours, but it would be to sell the bonds in 17, as roughly around $14.8 million. Would be 20-year life, and then we would reserve in our capital reserve $3,850,000 for a capital reserve, kind of a not too little, not too much. And then that would leave us right around $12.6 million of funds for capital projects. So, so really the decision you'll want to make is how much money do you want in your capital reserve versus how much money do you want to spend on the projects. And really that's the city's decision as to how much you can spend on new projects or maintain the existing facilities and keep a cash balance to fund those needs as you see as well. So I'll just stop there and just ask if you have any questions. I know I went through that very quickly, and if there aren't, I have some tax some credit considerations that I'd like to walk you through as well, as because we are talking selling another $14 million of bonds, and this would affect the city's general obligation rating. So we want to kind of talk about the impact of that when we get to that point as well. So I'll open it up to anyone who has any questions at this point.
Well, the question that I have that I think is the most important question is, when do we have to answer this question? I mean, we don't, you know, when this council sits as it's designated now, but starting in January of 17, there'll be a different council. You know, we really can't bind a future council with a decision. So I'm asking, when does this decision have to be made? November of 2017 or?
Maybe Roger or Brian might have a view, but my view on it is it's what information can you share with the public so they get behind the projects and supporting the direction that you're going. But I know there's legal considerations as well.
Mr. President, Councilor Webster, I think I was going to advise the council of this in making the decisions that you may have to make tonight. I think the #1 deadline that is approaching is under the state statute. You have to identify the projects and the terms of the new tax 90 days prior to the general election that will be submitted to the voters on. That's November 8th, so I believe it'd be around August 8th. There would be this council meeting, and there will be another council meeting on August 2nd. But we have to at least have the framework for what the proposal is going to be so that the public can be notified. After that deadline, and we haven't gotten into the specifics of it, one way of framing the question would be to identify the projects and the amount, and what I was going to propose was that the voters be asked to authorize this for a period beginning at the earliest January 1, 2018, which would be the first possible date, and the latest January 1, 2020. And that would mean, I think, that the council would really have, if you wanted to, you could wait until you find out what the legislature is willing to do. And if the new sales tax is approved next spring, if it's presented next spring and it's approved, if a decision is made at that time to take advantage of the call date in December, you can do that. I think you or that council will have all of its options open. So that's why I was going to suggest that we do this. But again, I think we do, if you can, you need to make some decisions, preferably tonight. As I know previously, I believe Councilor Fisher indicated she can't be here for that next meeting. So to the extent that she wants to have her input into this, you'd be looking at trying to decide that tonight. And that really would be the amount that you want to have authorized for the taxes, and then the projects.
The amount in the projects, not necessarily whether we were going to call.
No, you do not have to decide that this evening.
Yeah, the way the wording that Roger put together would give the future council flexibility to make that decision. Just do point out that, we were talking about this earlier this afternoon, and Roger was kind of under the gun to get this thing cranked out, but it'd be actually January 1 of 2021, because the last payment is December of 2020, so then the date is actually 2021. The other thing I would just kind of point out, it'd be my guess that the reason we sold 2 separate bond issues, and this is part of that discussion we had a meeting or so ago about what's the cost of two separate issues and all that, was because of the $10 million limit for bank qualification. If you have bond issues that any group can buy, we can only sell $10 million a year. Okay, if you go over that, then your pool of buyers shrinks, and it's the big boys on Wall Street, and it's the big banks, it's the, and their interest rates that they're willing to pay are usually higher. You know, we have to pay them higher rates, and so my gut feeling is because we still had GO bond needs for street repairs and all the other things, that the city council at that time said, well, we don't want to go over 10, so we're going to cut that, the sales tax bond issues into two.
In two
So part of
parts.
it was in one year, part of it was in another. So then we could get by that aspect. Because what's being proposed with the current bond issues is already over $10 million, you know, the same question needs to be asked. Do you want to go over 10 at one time and run that risk of having higher interest, or do you want to cut that 13.5 into 2 and separate it into 2 years so you can do two years of 10 million or less?
But that's not a decision we have to make tonight.
And
Well,
that's
we're
not a
not-
decision, but I think it plays into that concept that we were talking about earlier, though, that we were talking about, well, we could save money if we do one.
Right, and I was wrong.
Well, and along the same lines is what Brian is pointing out. That's a driving force, perhaps, behind having two bond issues, but the other factor is the extent to which there might be some private activity use in any
Right.
one of the proposals here. Our bond counsel confirmed again today that at least at this point, it would be her recommendation that if we were certain we were going to have to deal with that, we probably would be dealing with two bond issues. And with the scope of some of these, it might be a way for us to break it apart so we can keep it under the $10 million number. A lot of those details, we're going to need to be working with her on, because we've got to really make some decisions about the use,
Right.
about how these are going to be structured, who's going to be managing them, because that'll drive whether or not she's going to tell us these are
Right.
private activity uses or not.
Right,
But those are things that we can work out down the
Right.
road.
as we go along.
Right.
Yeah, but then my only additional thought on the $10 million timing is sometimes there's projects that have to get timed out, and the IRS wants you to spend your monies as quickly as you can. So if there's a time gap between Project A and Project C, it just might naturally work out to sell a bond issue here and wait a couple years for this project, because you're selling your bonds every year. So just, I would recommend it based on the timing of the project itself. Because I've been trying to predict interest rates higher for 8 years, and they're actually at all-time lows today, so hard to guess where
Right.
rates are gonna go,
Good luck.
so. And then the last thing I had, if there's no further questions, is I wanted to spend just a few moments for you, because I know we always talk about your bond rating and how attractive that is. I wanted to spend a few more minutes, and I know this is difficult to read, how your bond rating is kind of articulated from Moody's. And this is kind of broken up in categories. They've now kind of opened up their black box. And how they've divided your rating is 30% of your rating is derived by the economy. So the economy here in Minnesota, what is it doing in the county, and then more importantly, what is it doing here in the city? And that's about 30% of your overall rating.
Okay, thank you. I
And
apologize.
they look at how
Oh,
they judge your
correct.
economy based on the size of your city, how big you are. And you can see that based on the size of your community, and I've told this over the years, how great you are, how high you're rated relative to your size. They have pegged you based on your size and only an A category community, just because of your size. To get in that double A category, they want you to have $1.5 billion of market value in the community or higher. And you guys don't quite have that, so you're really highly rated for your size. The other thing they look at is your social and economic indicator, the median family income. And as of the time we did this, you were at 98%, which is right there indicative of a double A rating. So that's indicative of how can your residents afford what the city's doing in terms of taxes and rates and charges and stuff. And you guys bode really well on that. It's a double A category. So that's 30% of your rating. So what is it? 20% is in the A category relative into your economy because of your size. So now we have to kind of offset that. Now, the strength for years and years for the city of New Ulm has been your finances by far and away, and this is 30% of your rating. balanced budgets. I know you've had a balanced budget and actually had a small surplus for many, many years. I know the legislature in Minnesota have thrown a few curveballs, and yet again, you've balanced your budget here and have been able to maintain strong fund balance, strong cash balances. And you can see on the far left-hand side, your fund balance, they're saying for a city, if you have a fund balance in excess of 30%, now this is national. Here in Minnesota, normal cities in Minnesota have at least 50% fund balance. Nationally, AAAs have 30% or less. So that's indicative of how strong Minnesota is. And you can see the cash balance has been strong as well. So you may ask, well, how do we get such a strong rating if we're a smaller community and they're putting it in this smaller box? It's because of the finances, the decisions that you're making during your budget process, making the tough decisions to cut or to raise taxes. That is being heard loud and clear by Moody's. And you guys are, that by far is the strength of the community it's conservative. Every time Reg and I get on the phone with them, we budget conservative. We underestimate revenues, overestimate expenditures, so we can control the outcome and generate a small surplus. So, congratulations on that front, because I think that bodes really well. Management, another 20%. They've judged the laws of Minnesota, and they think the laws of Minnesota, your ability to raise taxes and to do what you guys do, is kind of indicative of AA institutional category. And then they want you to know, are you building your fund balance, or are you just keeping that flat? Because a lot of cities are struggling just to keep their fund balance flat, meaning they don't have a surplus. And you guys over the years have had a small surplus every year. And Moody's wants you to have a 1.02% surplus every year to get in the AA category. So you've been pretty strong on that front. Now, down here, the pensions, that's 20% of your rating. And you can see, based on the debt that the city has right now, you're in the A category. So that means that you have what they consider above average debt relative to communities your size. So that's why I wanted to mention that tonight, because we are talking another $14 million on top of the debt that you currently have. That is going to stress out the rating. I don't think it'll cause a downgrade, because we had this discussion with them back in 2001, but it burdens up your debt burden. I don't know why this is, but Moody's does not view the local option sales tax as a essential revenue stream of the city. So they bury you with the burden of the debt, but they don't give you credit for the revenue coming in. And you say, well, what do they give you credit for? It's property taxes, it's essential sewer, water, monopolistic type payments where you have to pay that. So that's really the struggle that we have when we're visiting with the rating agencies is, yeah, but we're getting $1.2 million a year to pay this. They don't care. They just think that's a kind of a volatile income stream, so they discount it. So that's a challenge that we have when we go to the rating agencies. So you can see in the lower right-hand corner, all of this mathematically gets you to a AA3. And then you say, well, why are we a AA2? Well, we're a AA2 because of the conservatism and the strength of the management here in the city and the decisions that you all have been making. They feel that's another notch up to a AA2. So I wanted to share that a little with you, because that's kind of the mechanics of how the rating agencies derive the rating for the city. So I'll just open it up to any questions, because that'll affect the bond sale that we had tonight. We did get your AA2 rating reconfirmed by Moody's based on this math. So I'll open it up to any questions. The other thing I'll add about the city is you're very aggressive in terms of your payback of the debt. We have a lot of cities we work with where you're selling bonds for 20 years because it keeps the impact low, but their debt burden grows significantly over time because it's taken them so long to pay that debt. Noam sells 10 years, we always traditionally have, 15 for the PUC because that's more revenue based there. And then as the special assessments come in, Reg and I have always looked at those monies as they've been paid off, and then we've been paying off your existing bonds, as you guys, I think, have just approved the several notices of redemption. You've been paying them off faster than 10 years, which again is very impressive. It's allowing you not to get buried with debt. You're going in there, you're paying it off very, very quickly, and you're managing it very, very well. So that's what I'll add, and I'll just open up any other questions you had on that front.
Anybody have any questions?
You always come with such wonderful news.
You guys are doing a great job. It's the, because usually when we get involved, the decisions have been made, and so you guys always have made very, very strong collective management decisions. So it's
Would
my
you have a-
pleasure to present the benefits of that.
Would you have a guess on what our interest rates will be on these bonds? Can you?
He's been guessing wrong for 8 years.
I have been guessing wrong right now. I don't want to steal my own thunder, but you just sold today, I'm going to be sharing with you 10-year bonds that were bank qualified at a 122.
Wow.
So if I was to guess at what a 20-year rate is, it's probably less than 2%. And you may have noticed in my numbers, because I'm very conservative, because I don't know what rates will be in 17 or even 20 for that matter. I had a 3.67 that far out. So based on today's interest rates, we have a lot of cushion before we can't produce these proceeds.
And we probably thought back 20 years ago that 4.7 and
Yeah.
4.4 was pretty good,
Yeah.
I would guess.
Yes.
from what
And
I
we,
remember back
in
then.
fact, I just heard the United States hit all-time 240-year interest rate lows on the U.S. Treasury. And then the muni hit all-time lows June, just a couple weeks ago or so.
Thank you.
So, which makes you wonder if maybe we're inclined to start going negative as well. I mean, I wonder that sometimes.
That'd be interesting.
It would be.
No more questions? We should entertain a motion to receive it in order to file, then we'll go on to the next one.
So
I'll
moved.
move it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, John, we'll go on to item 5B.
All right, very good. That's, I think, in your packet, if you don't have a copy of this, I would encourage you to read through it. As I mentioned earlier, the city did get its rating reconfirmed at a AA2. And just for the public here, strong financial reserves, strong management, and your role as kind of an economic center here in the area as a couple of real strengths. And they've again identified one of your challenges is you're just a smaller city relative to how highly that you are rated. And they did notice that your debt burden is above average, so they did mention that. So. With that, I'll just open it up to any questions you have.
And the
And
way
just
that,
just for the public, the highest rating you can get is AAA, and then there's AA1, and then there's AA2. So you're only a couple notches away from the best rating that Moody's can give you. So congratulations for a community your size. That's a very strong rating.
Sounds good.
and, you know, the challenges are a small tax base, small property tax
Exactly.
base, and a modest socioeconomic profile compared to other.
Yeah, in fact, we just had a couple cities that were rated AA1, and their social economic indicator was a 160. Meaning they were making 160% of the average American. That kind of shows you the wealth of those communities that are getting even a notch above where you guys are
Right,
at.
from, you know, and that's based on earnings, income, right?
Anybody have any questions? Again, entertain a motion then.
So moved.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second to receive notification. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. John, item 5C.
All right, the last but not least is the sale of our bond issue today. Earlier today, the city did solicit from underwriters for the purchase of $3,205,000 general obligation permanent improvement revolving fund bonds. And this was your annual borrowing, $2,875,000 was for new money purposes. And then we did also implement a refunding of your 2007 bonds that we sold way back when. The city's going to take some cash on hand, and it's going to. We also sold $320,000 worth of bonds, and we're going to pay $505,000 worth of bonds off here on I think September 1st, if my memory serves me right. And we will keep the term the same, and the city was able to save $52,000 of reduced interest costs associated with that. It's about 10% of the par amount that you're calling in. And just to give you an idea, the old bonds, the 2007 bonds, had a 4.05% interest rate, and we're going to reduce those to your coupon of a 186. So that kind of tells you the reduction of interest rates over the last few years. We did ended up getting, and this is the results of sale, ended up getting 4 bids. UMB Bank out of Kansas City, Missouri. And on the lower right-hand corner, there's a symbol called TIR, that's true interest rate. Similar to the APR in a car loan, we call it true interest rate in our industry. That's the all-in interest rate borrowing plus the cost of the underwriter of a 1.22%. You can see Robert W. Baird out of Milwaukee had a 1.35. And Mesro Financial out of Chicago had a 144, and Stiefel Nicholas had a 151. Let's see, and I guess the only thing I'd add is the Robert W. Baird, and we don't have them listed on here. Every time they bid, they have probably 20 different underwriters on their bids, and so I know that this city got proposals from underwriters all over the United States, and you can see even from these 4 here, we ended up getting it from Kansas City, Milwaukee, Chicago, and all the way down from Birmingham, Alabama. So your strong rating is pulling in a lot of underwriters and a lot of interest throughout the country. And if there are any questions, we were able to decrease the bond size down. Here we originally had it selling out at $3,205,000, and we were able to decrease it down to $3,195,000. So PFM would recommend that the City Council award this to UMB Bank at a $3,195,000 at a 1.2209%.
Makes sense to me. I'll offer the motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to offer the resolution, waived reading, authorizing the issuance. Any more discussion? Seeing none, Finance Director, please call the roll.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Mack,
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
Counselor Webster.
Yes.
President Schmitz.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
All right, we'll get back to the regular agenda. We'll start with item 2A, consider motion approving the issuance of a lawful gambling permit for the Church of St. Mary's, and that's for Sunday, September 25th, 2016.
I'll offer the motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 2B, consider motion approving the issuance of a lawful gambling permit for Sioux Trails Chapter of Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, and that's for Saturday, October 22nd, 2016, American Legion Place.
I'll offer the motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 2C, consider approving extension of an annual on-sale intoxicating and Sunday liquor license for the Pub and Patio Incorporated into the Sidewalk Cafe area.
I'll offer the motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Is there any reason why we would treat this place any differently than we've treated anybody else? You know,
I think it's just a
nothing
new
special
addition.
about it? It's,
No.
right, all right.
Seemed to be.
Okay. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 2D, consider a motion approving the issuance of a tree service license for L&E Tree Service Incorporated.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second, and that's for 1 year starting July 20th, 2016, ending June 30th, 2017. No more discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 2F, consider motion approving the issuance of a lawful gambling permit for the New Ulm Area Catholic Schools to conduct raffle gambling, and that's for August 1st, 2016.
I'll move it.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any
Did-
more discussion?
Catholics like to gamble.
Did you miss the malt liquor license?
Was that
Did I miss
pulled?
one?
No,
Oh, Reg will take care of that,
Which one?
yeah.
There was
I-
a 2E on the paper, on the agenda when it came
oh,
out.
it's not in
Yeah.
our, it's not in our.
Oh.
Well, I've got 2E approving the issuance. I was just
You got
thinking,
it
how
in,
many
we don't.
liquor licenses are we offering tonight, you know? I was
Oh.
counting.
I don't have.
Okay.
Skip over 2E to 2F there, you mean?
Yeah, I think he
B.
slipped from 2D to 2F,
Not
but,
listed there.
Not listed.
Yeah,
Not
that is
listed.
not listed on mine
Not
either.
listed on mine.
All right. Well, let's just
Well-
do
Oh,
2F,
right
and then I'll
outside
jump
by
back to my
somewhere.
paper.
all right.
That's why we carry a paper.
Well,
Okay, we got a motion and a second?
Yes.
motion and a second on 2F for the.
Correct.
Yes, we do, for the lawful gambling.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now we'll go back to
Now we have to
E,
make sure that these
consider
people.
approving the issuance of a temporary on-sale
There you go.
8.2 malt liquor license for
Right.
Church of St. Mary's.
That's right. So moved.
Second.
All right.
All right, any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now we'll go on to 3A, oral present, nope,
Yay,
yep,
here we
he's
go.
coming up there. The oral presentation conducted by Denny Ward and Wandagog Monument Committee representing the city of New Ulm with a canvas print predicting the Wandagog Movement Project and adopt a resolution to accept said print. Denny?
Thank you very much. Just really proud and pleased to be here with you and make a presentation to my fellow citizens of New Ulm. Here is a canvas print of the soon-to-be erected monument to the great famous New Ulmite Wandagog, to be placed in front of the in front of the library, the children's room. So we'll be visible from the inside for the children and the 8,000 some cars a day who drive by. And we'll be able to see it and enjoy the view, and hopefully we'll appreciate the talent that Wandagog is beyond doubt the most widely internationally known person ever to come out of New Ulm. And it is only right and proper that this image of her artwork as a young artist in New Ulm is placed in this prominent position. Another wonderful facet of this project is that a present-day New Ulm artist, Mr. Jason Jasperson, is the artist who is creating the statue and who also created this depiction, with the original painting occupying a prominent place in our New Ulm library. A New Ulm artist honoring a great New Ulm artist is unique in itself. Thank you very much, and my privilege and pleasure to hand this to you.
Thank you, Denny.
Bravo.
Thank you, Denny.
Thank you.
I'll offer,
Explanation will be on the inside.
I'll offer the resolution, waive the reading to accept the print.
Second.
We got a motion and a second off the resolution, waived reading, accepting the canvas print. Any more discussion?
Mr. Warda, when is the monument gonna be done?
Hopefully about Thanksgiving time.
Thanksgiving time? Great, thank you.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, Finance Director, please call the roll.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Mack,
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
Counselor Webster.
Yes.
President Schmitz.
Yes, motion carries. Item 3C, consider motion to receive and order filed a communication from Mayor Robert Boisman requesting the City Council to support a designated Minnesota as the official site of the 2023 World Fair Expo. Mr. Mayor.
I believe the letter has been attached, or a copy of it. I would request that all council members, city manager, and myself will sign it and send it on to Secretary Kerry, and also that's an old term. Top
Carbon
copies,
copy.
copies to our governor, our lieutenant governor, two senators, and our congressman, and our two state representatives, or I should say, our state senator and state representative. And I believe Mr. Mark Ritchie is the president of the Minnesota World's Fair Bid Committee, so we would send him a copy also.
So are they asking all cities, bunch of cities, random cities to submit these?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I would assume, I know Hopkins has one sent,
Okay.
and that's the only one that I know for sure.
Will they be, having a site here in New Ulm? Sort of a little adjunct place?
Well, we'll see.
Okay, well,
Without
we'll
a
see.
letter, no.
Right.
All right. Entertain a motion to receive it and
I'll
order
move it.
filed.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to receive it in order filed. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 4A, oral presentation from Nathan Firth regarding the recommendation future Charles routes.
Our monthly
Nathan?
meeting with Nathan.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah, so it's time for our monthly meeting. I think this might be the last presentation that I get to give you folks.
Oh, no.
So, really? Yeah, the end of an era. As my AmeriCorps service comes to an end. Anyway, excuse me. I'll jump right in since you have a very full agenda today. During our conversation about shared lane markings or sharrows that we had a few meetings ago, talked about wanting to know what recommendations might be if you would like to expand the sharrow routes in New Ulm. And so I went back to the Cassius Committee, which is the Coalition for Active, Safe, and Healthy Streets, and we discussed sort of which areas we thought would be sort of the most vital to fill out the entire sharrow routes. And so since it would have to be an iterative process because you can only paint so many per season, we decided to kind of break it down into a couple phases. And so each of the phases on this map, which is included in your packet, would be sort of iterative, so they'd build on the strength of the network. And so by the time you get to like the last phase 4, you would have a very complete bicycling network. And these are all on the bike routes that had been voted to be designated in, I think it was January. So as you can see, phase 2, since phase 1 has already been approved, phase 2 would be the next logical step. And so with this recommendation, you would have the reasons for this recommendation are increased health equity, which is you're going by locations in New Ulm where there's a high density of chronic illnesses, and you're also, these are areas that might have more people on average than the average using their bicycles, so you might have a good sort of return on that investment there. And also they're going by places of high density where there's a lot of kids. So for the Safe Routes to School program, this would also be advantageous for that. Let's see here, there are a lot of different parks that are on the phase 2 routes. So you have Riverside, Minicon, Johnston Field, to name a few. You also have Washington Elementary, although with the transition it will be mostly kindergarten and pre-K, so that was kept in mind. And then also, places like Putting Green, businesses like Firmenich, and you have the fairgrounds as well. So a lot more connectivity and stuff like that. So are there any questions about the maps?
So basically, you're looking at where people would go.
Right.
Right, because Washington is also going to have the community ed, in
Exactly.
addition to pre-K and
Yep.
kindergarten.
Yeah, so that's part of the process, is trying to find the locations that are really key for community members that they'd want to go to. So you're providing them with an option to feel comfortable bicycling there.
It looks like it's pretty balanced out for each year, so
Yeah,
it looks workable.
Right, yeah, that was the goal, is to keep it within a realistic amount that could be painted. Although this, I should mention, is not accounting for any repainting that might have to take place.
Right.
It should still be, hopefully by the end of this season, we'll have a much better idea of what is possible and the time it takes and stuff like that, so, yeah.
Do we know how many are painted at this point, or?
I don't know the answer to that question. I haven't seen any myself.
Have you started yet, Kurt? Nope. The answer's none.
We're waiting.
Well, Nathan, you mentioned your time is wrapping up, so it's a one-year position that you're in for AmeriCorps, correct?
Yep, and
11 months.
so Park and Recreation got a Green Corps member, which is what I'm doing right now, and so the Heart of New Ulm also has another one coming in, so you'll have 2 next year, which is
Yay,
great.
So
that's
your
great.
position will be replaced with a new
Correct.
individual, so.
Alright.
Yep,
Well, I think on behalf of the council, I want to thank you. You've done a lot of good work in this last year, and you've really brought bicycle safety and the use of bicycles to the forefront of our community, so thank you for that.
great. Really appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Best wishes in the next step.
Yes.
Thank you.
What is the
Yeah.
next step for you?
Still looking.
Still looking. Okay. Just ask.
Good.
Good luck for you.
Yeah, good.
you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Nathan.
Thank you.
All right, this time I'd entertain a report, or motion to receive the report.
I'll offer the motion to receive the report.
I'll second.
We got a motion, a second to receive the report. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 4B, consider selecting a local option sales tax reauthorization project, selecting timing of the referendum. Questions for the 2016 or 2018, select a timeline for the paying off the existing bonds in 2017 or 2020, and set a size of the future sales tax project bond issue, and if appropriate, instruct the city attorney to prepare referendum question wording. And I guess the last thing is what he did. He presented us each with one, and I don't know if you want to go through it again, Roger, or just,
No, I think, I'm going to be deferring to Brian, I think,
Okay.
Mr. President, but I do, again, with the decisions are spelled out, there's a number of them that need to be made,
Right.
whether you do it in one resolution or multiple ones. But again, the requirement of the state statute is that the proceeds of the tax must be dedicated exclusively to repayment of the cost of a specific capital improvement which is designated at least 90 days before the referendum on imposition of the tax. So that's the one deadline that we're really under the gun on, is to be designating this. It would be appropriate, of course, to determine the amount that you'd be seeking and the other matters in here. I'm not so sure, again, if we need to get into the timeline for determining the payoff of the existing bonds. But all of the other matters really should be voted on tonight if you can.
So we've got to pick the projects, and we've got to pick the amount.
And the timeline.
No, we don't have
No,
to.
timeline
No, we
we
don't
don't.
have,
Okay.
no.
Well,
that's-
if you decide to go with the range that I provided for you, from 2018 to 2021.
Right, but we don't have to decide, we can decide on the range, but we don't
Down the
have to,
road,
Right.
we don't have to decide whether we're going to,
Exactly when they would be.
option one or option two or option three or option four. Just, thank you for
Okay,
doing.
Brian?
And it's 2021, January 1st,
somebody
2021.
want to add to it?
I said it all on the issue sheet.
Oh,
No, I mean,
really? All on the
the-
issue sheet? We have to
Yeah,
read
real
this?
quiet.
Yeah,
No,
right.
you know, the items for discussion, I think got narrowed down, you know, after working with the city attorney's office today, and we put the language together. The language that you have is kind of a place setter. You still have to decide, are you going to do those things that are listed? Maybe you want to drop one out and bring on something that you feel is more important as a council for the city. Those are all, that's up to you, but you have the general ballot question there. This is the format it would look like. And so the question, quite simply, is select the projects, identify the maximum dollar figure
So-
of your
Mr.
bond issue.
Yeah, let's-
Mr. Gravis, excuse me, Counselor, one thing I would add is I think in the conversations we had today, and this is reflected on just the sample ballot that I prepared, I believe that we've determined that we cannot use the new sales tax money to buy land.
Right.
So the proposal that was made previously that we should use this for economic development, real estate purchases, it's not possible. However, we do have some land in the airport industrial park, and this is something where we can use these proceeds for capital improvements, for utilities, et cetera. And I believe there was a recommendation of $1.25 million or $1,400,000
Well-
for that purpose?
Yeah, we'll just highlight that one.
Because I don't think that was on the list on your
Correct.
data sheet, so.
Correct. Like I say, some of this was hot off the press, and some had to be done last, Friday to get out on the agenda.
Right.
But the proposal was that if there was any additional funding available, that the Renew Committee suggested that the industrial park, be considered. All right. Since that time, the city attorney's office and I and bond counsel and bond consultant, financial consultant, worked these things through and determined that the actual buying of the land was not allowable.
Under the state statute.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and, or correct. And the expansion of the airport industrial park really was made up of two different things. One was the buying of the land and at about $1.1 million for 22 acres. And then the other, like $1.4 million was for the infrastructure, water, sewer, street, stormwater, gravel, road. Just like we did on the first airport industrial park, put in gravel and put the infrastructure in. So the question was asked, and I think we're certain that it's legal to use these funds to put the capital project of the infrastructure in the ground. We just can't buy the ground with local option sales tax money. So
And
because it's limited to capital projects. And since infrastructure is a capital project, we could put the water, sewer, and street in, but we couldn't buy the 22 acres. So if this was going to be included, which we did list it here, capital improvements to airport industrial park, at some point in the future, the city council is gonna have to decide, are we gonna come up with $1.1 million to buy that land?
Right.
Because you've heard from Mr. Toll, from the EDC, that they don't have the funds to buy the land. They potentially have the funds to put up a building if somebody was to say, I need a building, but they can't buy the land, so that was put on the city's plate.
But that was on a priority, you know, we're talking about the project that, at least from the Renew Committee, had the lowest priority.
Yeah,
So
the next one in
the next one in line.
sequence,
Right.
if you had money.
Mhm.
And I'll just touch on that just a second too, is that the Renew Committee took a conservative approach at looking at what should the total dollar be, and they selected $13.5 million.
Right.
You will, I think, also notice that Mr. Burmeister earlier was talking about $14.8 million.
Right.
So, you know, the financial aspect, you know, would, based on the history, would come up with a higher number. It's just that, given the conservativeness of the Renew Committee, they said, well, let's go to the max. Let's back off a little bit and make sure that we can, you know, cover the debt, if you want to call it that. Who knows what's going to happen in 20 years after you sell the bonds?
Sure,
I
sure,
don't. Most people are not going to know. But the fact of the matter is the analysis, even with John Burmeister's conservative analysis of doing the numbers, 14.5, 14.8 was still a reasonable calculation. It's just that Renew took a lower number.
Sure. But that's a decision we have to make.
Correct.
We have to decide whether to go with the Renew Committee's 13.5 or 13.9, or Burmeister's 14.8, or something in between.
Or you could sit and say, we only feel comfortable with 12 million, and we're gonna
Right.
cut one of these projects out.
Right.
And that's the authority of the city council.
Right.
You decide what you want in as projects, and then you decide how much you wanna spend.
And, Mr. President,
Yes.
everyone will please check my math, especially Reg. When you're looking at Brian's list of the projects 1 through 5, I believe they total 13 million. And if you were to include an estimate of 1.4 for the improvements to the airport industrial park, it should get us to 14.
14.
5 if you round up.
Sure, but this has been a worry all along, that the projected costs are really not real firm. You know, especially when you start talking about things like the water park and the aquatics project, which is, you know, the top one. I think that I just think that that's a pretty I think we're going to be spending more money on that water park than that. And with that said, can we disconnect the total from the projected cost. In other words, do we have to say, okay, this, let's just say we decided that this was gonna be 13.5. We don't have to say, and of that, we expect 14.5 is gonna be the, we just decide how much we're going to borrow, ask permission to borrow, and then we're gonna do these projects. And then we'll be in the we might be in a situation as we were with the last bond issue where that's not enough, and then we have to go for taxpayer money to fill these out.
And I think I mentioned last time that I really thought this industrial park, and I'm glad to hear that we can actually work on some of this other infrastructure issues. To me, in my opinion, it sits way up at that 1, 2, 3 range, and just from my perspective, if we can build our tax base, that's just smart management is smart for our future. So I like to see it included.
Well, but and I won't be on the city council, but if you include it in this ballot question, then you've decided for another city council that we are going to buy that land, and it's not in the budget.
Well, we're gonna put the infrastructure, and we ain't buying the land.
Yeah, not the land.
No, excuse me, you can't put the infrastructure in until you buy the land,
But we-
you know?
right.
You know, and that's not in the budget.
No, it's like
That's
putting the
not
cart,
in the plan.
it's like putting the cart before the horse.
Exactly.
And you know, the other thing is about this, you know, when we had Brian here and he was speaking about it, he did say there's 2 other alternative locations for industrial parks. So, and this one is at the highest price point.
Right.
You know, granted, we have some development there. We also have some development on 29 on the
Sure.
other side of the airport going for the future here too. So, you know, now is that individual gonna hold us and say,
Yeah,
you put the, you know,
You put it in
you've already designated this and
right. And
it's gonna be X amount of dollars.
and
I don't like that.
I don't like that either. And, you know, like I said, for the last project, the city had to shovel in a lot more money. I would just as soon be more conservative in how much these are gonna cost, have less projects with this amount of money, and not be expecting to throw more money in, using that future money to make a decision whether we should expand the industrial park. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I can live with that as long as we are following this decision, or at least in the next couple of meetings, we get busy on this industrial park issue and look at what our options are and start moving on
We're on
that.
budget time.
You know, I mean, this whole industrial park, we haven't purchased land for 16, 17
Right.
years. But what's kept them from coming here and saying, we're gonna put $100,000 a year away for 16 years, we would've had $1.6 million. You know, so I mean, we have to get started,
Yep,
we have to get
going.
started today,
On the budget time.
you know,
Mhm.
and put some realistic dollars aside.
Yep.
And factor it into our 2017 budget and continuing. This- And I would rather, you know, narrow the list down, know that we can build these projects. Maybe we can also put in that, building maintenance fund into the wording here yet too. And,
That was gonna be my next
you
question.
know,
I
and
wanted
be
to talk
more
about that.
conservative with, and maybe not have everything on here.
That is, it includes and to fund reserves for facilities maintenance and replacement, so that would be part of the ballot.
So, that's just my thoughts.
Could you, Roger, could you talk more about the discussions that you've had with bond council about private use? Is this something that we should be considering when we look at things like the Johnson Park and the gymnastics portion of the rec
It's a
center?
Very good question. I was concerned about that. The information from bond council was basically this, that if there, and we would have, if we're certain enough that any particular use is going to be private activity that could pose a problem with the IRS, we should be segregating that into a different bond issue. And the interest rate will be higher. She didn't think it would be substantially higher, but it would be a little more. We would also have the additional costs associated with the second bond issue, but as Brian was pointing out earlier with the $10 million cap, there may be reasons to do that anyway. The problem with determining this, and she really suggested that she would want to know as precisely as possible exactly what are the uses. If we were to include things like the dome, there have been discussions about some sort of joint operation with the school district and the college. With the gymnastics part of this, there have been discussions about Turner Hall and the other gymnastics organizations. You really get into details such as a management agreement, is there a lease, before she would be able to say, yes, it's private use, or no, it's not. So what I talked to Brian about is, as this comes together, if you want to move forward with this, we're going to need to work with the groups and need to work with her to make those decisions. So it shouldn't really have a huge impact financially on the city's cost of the bonding. But we just need to be careful, the city staff, to make sure that it's being labeled appropriately.
And that carefulness and that labeling appropriately will come after they vote, we assume the voters approve the
Correct.
question and it goes through the legislature. So that's future work.
Exactly,
You know,
correct,
so-
yes.
So really, we can approve what we have here and then worry about those things as we proceed forward.
And I was not personally involved at the time that the initial existing sales tax was passed. I know the list of activities was much shorter. Here, I have not on the ballot identified projected costs, because as Councilor Webster pointed out, we really don't have a clue.
No.
Those are all decisions for a future council to make
Right.
about how much are we gonna spend in any particular aspect of these. So, again, we do need to authorize an amount, and in general, the type of activities that the proceeds would be used for.
I have a question. If we have these projects listed as they're proposed, and we get down the road and we feel we can't do one of the projects, we can go ahead with the other projects and not?
I think this is something that's discretionary for the city to
Okay.
make those decisions. If, for whatever reason, the estimates come in higher, building costs have gone up, the need for one of these changes, I think you have the discretion after the approval, if there's legitimate grounds to not move forward with it. You're not obligated to do these. But you have identified what you would like to do, and you aren't necessarily bound by a priority. I think the council's been approaching it that way, as far as which ones you're kind of ranking, as the committee did. And that might affect how you look at this moving forward, if the tax is approved and you start getting estimates and start getting costs.
And obviously, you can't bring on another project if one would happen to drop out.
No,
It
and if-
has to be these projects would be the
That
only
is
ones.
absolutely correct. It's a very good point, that if something fell by the wayside and there was one that had not been included, we cannot be using this money for something new.
Right. And this is just step one. We still have, the voters are gonna have to approve it this fall, and
Right, right,
then the
right, right.
legislature, who knows what they could do with this
Well, do we,
whole thing,
do,
so.
do we feel comfortable, with the language, being used to describe what we have in mind? And I'm looking specifically at the, the first one on the list, which is, because it's on the first one on the list, build a water park and safety improvements to existing aquatic facilities. Do we think that that's descriptive enough for people to understand, existing aquatic facilities? Is that the right word, or do we say they,
Counselor Webster, when I did this, I was working off of the initial proposed ballot that the Renew Committee had provided. I made some changes to the language, but I think it's also a very legitimate question. I think you need to be comfortable that however this is phrased is going to adequately identify the project for the voters. And this may not, this again is primarily language from the committee. there might be
Right.
better ways to describe this.
I would propose that, you know, the concept has been an indoor water park. I mean, this leaves open for an outdoor water park,
So there could be some confusion by some voters.
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so
Right.
if we're contemplating indoor, I would say
Yep,
that,
I agree.
that's a descriptive word that probably should be here.
And, and,
And it sounds like it's a whole separate water park where it's basically an addition.
right,
And
and,
it's an
and I don't think,
improvement.
Basically, it's a tune-up.
when my friend Peg says, I'm gonna take my grandchildren to swim, she doesn't say, I will take them to the existing aquatic facilities. Yeah, and I'm just
Yeah.
making a joke
Yeah.
that way, but what do people call the pool? You know,
Pool.
what do people call the pool?
The pool.
The
Indoor, the indoor pool, the indoor pool. Yeah.
Ah. Hmm.
But a water park is more than just a pool.
That's right, but that's why I was focused not on the first part, not on the first part of that phrase, but on the second part. Because existing aquatic facilities also include the little outdoor pools that we've got, and, you know, any number of other little features. But what do people call it? I mean,
So
you
you
know,
wanted
it's,
something like build an indoor water park and safety improvements to current.
you're, add a water park and safety improvements to
To
the existing
existing-
pool.
the
You know,
existing pool.
I think people call it the pool.
Pool facility.
Maybe-
Existing pool or Vogel Field
Or-
House.
Vogel Field.
Well, is when where's Tom?
Is he here?
Oh, he's
He's
there.
there.
Hand right up.
Ah,
Arena or something?
you don't, we don't really call the pool Vogel Arena, or do we? What do we call it? When you tell a worker to go, fix something, what do you, what?
Tom
language?
Schmitz, Park and Recreation Director. The indoor swimming pool is a portion of the recreation center,
Okay.
just as Vogel Field House is another portion of the recreation center.
Okay. To the existing pool in the yeah.
Just want to make sure we're real clear, that's the thing.
Right, you know, we don't want people, not voting because they're not sure of what's,
I think we
what's
could
going on.
advertise it some too in the paper. and,
This is
you
true.
know, really
Well, we
say-
can't.
We can't
No, we
advertise.
can't
Oh, we
spend money.
can't.
No, we can't.
No, we can't.
They'll do it for us.
If you add the word indoor,
Indoor,
water park and safety improvements to existing aquatic,
existing pool.
Pool,
Call it
yep.
the pool.
is there more to it than just the pool that's gonna be worked
No.
on?
I don't think so.
Well, not from the aquatic standpoint, no, but the indoor playground and
Right.
But
gymnastics
that's a
concept.
second,
That's
that's a,
coming up.
that's coming
Correct.
up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So would you put add an indoor water park and safety improvements to existing
Rec-
rec,
A
rec,
pool at the recreation center.
yeah.
I'd say, I always figure every word has to carry some weight, you know, has to say something. So that's where the pool is.
Cheryl's coming.
Here comes Cheryl.
Oh,
No,
there
go
goes
ahead.
Cheryl.
You know, before something comes up.
Right.
We scared her off.
In drafting
got
the,
this?
I'm sorry, just the council has got this.
yeah.
In drafting this, I was also having in mind trying to keep it as succinct as possible.
Right,
If it's
exactly.
gonna have to be on a ballot,
Yeah.
so we're
Right.
trying to give as much information in as few words as we can
That's fair,
use.
right.
Yeah.
So let's just say pool, four-letter word.
You okay with that, Roger?
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I think you brought up the point, we got a lot of pools. I
We
think
got, well,
everyone,
that's true, that's true.
That's why the word indoor has to be there.
Right.
now then we have an indoor water park and safety improvements to an indoor pool.
The existing
You
rec
want it?
center pool, existing rec center pool. It's
Okay.
the ad.
I like it.
I like
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, and, I mean, I suppose, we're not voting now, but I think I'm probably making myself clear. The Renew Committee, and I think I'm right about this, the Renew Committee, this was their number one pick, you know, and
The number one
I
pick.
mean,
And
Yeah,
also the community survey was the number one.
right,
By far,
right,
yeah.
so, that would be my number one pick.
2 and 3 sound fine for me.
Well, two is recreation center expansion for indoor playground, wellness center, and gymnastics programs. And I think the discussion point there has to be the gymnastics programs.
Wouldn't it be more of a gymnastics facility rather than a program? Or,
Because it's gonna be a dedicated facility
It's
for
gonna be
Build
a-
It.
Well,
Probably just delete the word programs.
programs, just say
Programs.
gymnastics, good point.
And maybe Mr. Schmitz can refresh my memory, the indoor playground is actually a remodel of what's already there, correct?
Yes, that's what has been proposed.
Yep. And the wellness center is an addition,
Correct,
and the gymnastics area would be an addition.
correct.
But things might be reconfigured, but in order to you're expanding so that you can refigure the interior to have an indoor playground, a wellness center, and a gymnastics program. You know, I don't think it really matters which one of those pieces goes in the new part. The expansion is, I think it would be accurate to say,
Instead of program, would facility be better?
I think just gymnastics, period. You know, because, who knows when that's not gonna happen, but the architect might say, oh, well, you can do gymnastics in this part and add here. I mean, I don't think that's true, but is there anybody who doesn't think we should, the gymnastics was the one that was batted around. So, that's the decision we have to make.
I think we should include it. As gymnastics, it was started out as one of the initial projects, and, there's a lot of community support for about 500+ kids in the
Yeah,
community.
500 kids, a lot of kids.
So,
And many of
One
them
that's
going to
sat here many
Mankato.
times.
and,
Yeah.
correct, so.
Well, and I was also encouraged by the, and we were really concerned, like maybe we couldn't do this at all. And I was asking, well, who's going to be able to use this facility? I was really encouraged by the response that, well, yes, we expect to have a lease so we can do our programs there, but we don't necessarily expect to have exclusive use, that if there's a way to open it up for public use at times. So I was encouraged by that, and I think gymnastics is sort of one of the things that seems to be the future. It seems like a lot of young people are going into gymnastics.
I think it definitely has a large following for the younger group, but also the extreme sports, I think, is coming, and they use that gymnastics type equipment for that. Some of that extreme sports and all of the competitions they have now. So I think when people see gymnastics, they think of young kids going through that program through high school, but I think there is use for that and beyond. So I think it should be included.
Yep.
We're okay with that one?
Yep.
All right. The dome,
This is
that's, everything seem okay?
It's another fretful one. Are we gonna, would you just remind me of the problems with
Well, the difficulty
trying to get
we
this straight.
we have there is that, my understanding is, first off, the school district is going ahead with putting in their field, so this would be after the fact. We would then need to enter into an arrangement with the school district, and if Martin Luther College wanted to participate, with the college as well. And those are all a lot of details to be determined. And whether or not that is going to have any private use effect on this. There's also, John Burmeister did mention it, but there are 501c3 bonds that, if we know for sure we're committing to facilities that are going to involve a nonprofit, that's another type of bonding that we could do. But this one is going to be complicated for it to work. I'm also not very proud of the language on the ballot. It's a good thing the public doesn't have this. What I had put down, this was from the committee.
Oh, yes, right,
Right,
sorry.
But it was build a multi-purpose seasonal dome indoor turf facility. I'm not sure what the seasonal means, because I think it would be 4 seasons. So I don't know if that
No,
needs to
no.
be that.
It would
Would
actually-
not be
Let's hear
4
it,
seasons.
let's hear it
No.
from the committee.
If it's
Or
domed,
Tom?
then what would it be?
It's a winter season. The dome would be up during the winter.
Just during the winter, okay, so it would be seasonal. And I wonder if it would be more appropriate to build an indoor multi-purpose seasonal dome turf facility. I don't know why it needs to be indoor, because it's
Yeah,
going to be.
Roger, I
domed.
guess I don't, from my perspective, we're building the dome. The turf is the schools, so we're not building a dome turf facility. You know, I think by definition,
is going to be
we're
there.
building the dome.
We're building.
Well, I don't know, if there was talk about their turf possibly expanding, depending upon the size of the dome. So we might be building some turf too.
But they're, but
I don't know.
No?
I've never heard that.
Okay.
Okay.
So if we want to talk about it, you know, what our dollars would go for would be everything above maybe 6 inches off the ground, you know, we'd have to have some tie into the ground. But we're just building a dome over somebody else's property.
Do we need to mention that we're building it at the school?
well,
No, I don't think you have to, you don't have to pick a
Yeah.
location. no.
Okay.
So that's the only part that would complicate it, I guess, in my mind, is we're not really building a turf facility. We're putting a dome over somebody else's turf facility. I don't know how you would describe it then, but
well, build a dome. Who's
One,
here to-
one
who's here to
suggestion
help?
might
Talk,
be
talk,
a
talk.
winter multi-purpose dome, period.
Yeah, instead of seasonal,
A winter
name the season.
multi-purpose dome.
Winter,
I
yeah,
like that better.
name the
Yeah.
season. Name the season.
As far as making it work, I guess I'm not too concerned about that. I think we have the LEC where it's a joint venture and things like that. I think if you get a committee set up
Right.
and stuff like that, it should be, be no problem.
I'm,
And we already have letters that they're willing to commit
Right.
to working together on this project, so.
I'm back on the language police here. The way the ballot is set up right now is not parallel. There's some verbs, some of these clauses start with verbs and some don't. And I think it might be,
I agree.
it might, just looking back, if we'd say projects to serve children, seniors, and families across the New Ulm region.
Delete build.
Delete build.
Mhm.
A water park and safety improvements to the existing pool. Recreation center expansion for indoor playground, wellness center, and gymnastics program. A multi-purpose winter dome turf.
No, we don't do it.
I just put a winter
skip it.
multi-purpose
Anyway,
dome.
all right, that's, right. Winter multi-purpose dome.
Portable.
How's that?
Portable. Multi-purpose dome.
And is this something that we want to go forward with? Is this,
This one kind of scares me.
what?
This one kind of scares me, the multi-purpose dome, just because it isn't on our property, and I just feel it's a lot of money for 6 months out of the year, and I just don't know if it could be allocated in a better way with some infrastructure. But I think it's great that we can partner, with different entities, but it's probably the one that concerns me the most.
Tom, do you have the times of the year that you would expect it to be up?
It would go up immediately after the last football game, and it would come down in the spring. I think it's end of April.
Tom, I don't know the extent to which you've had discussions with the school district, but what part of this would be used by the public in New Ulm as opposed to students?
We haven't worked out the exact details of a use agreement and so on, but there's a lot of public organizations, you know, through the school, public groups, and city groups that would be utilizing it. We'd also be renting it out to a variety of, you know, organizations within the area and the region. So we haven't denoted the percentage or the ratio of, you know, public users versus private users.
And college too.
Well, yes, and there's public and private colleges and universities that would be interested.
I guess, Tom, have you talked to the school district about who would be scheduling it? So the Park and Rec Department would be scheduling it with all the games and
That
the
has
events?
been in our initial discussions, yes. They would like us to do that, and we're fully capable of doing that.
Okay.
Mhm. You know, the infrastructure would be the fabric dome, the lighting, the HVAC system, and the foundation. The turf would be, you know, they're putting the turf in right now.
I guess I'll just make a comment. This project is not new to me. I think Toby was on a committee that I was on several years ago we met up at the college, and the college was real interested in doing this project. The school was involved with it. So it isn't something that just came up just in the last minute. This has been evolving for a few years already. So I guess I'm not really scared of it. I think it'll work, so.
I agree. It's also one of the facilities that has the most likely ability to cash flow.
Oh, good, that was the point I wanted to.
And we have a very cold Minnesota.
Yes, and there aren't any other domes between Austin and Sioux Falls or out west in the metro.
I like the fact that it makes another sport for our winter, you know, not just hockey, you know, it's, you know, we build, they're gonna come, you know.
Yes,
So they're gonna
for-
make it a destination, you know, the college can host things, the school could be doing things, et
Mhm.
cetera, so.
Yes, and I view the college as more of a user group than an owner or management group.
Well, as I stated, it was something that not anyone could actually afford, but if you went jointly, it could be done. So I think it's worthwhile.
I agree.
Okay, moving on.
Johnson Baseball Park.
Wouldn't ADA, my only question on that is, and ADA improvements, doesn't that just come with it? Do we have to do that anyway? Does that need to be in there? Or-
I'm thinking perhaps it might help to explain why it's appropriate to the voters.
To the voters,
that
okay.
if You're going to be
I'm just
helping.
thinking as they work on it, they're gonna have to follow those guidelines anyway, but you're right, that for some of the voters, they're gonna know those old bathrooms that are,
It's not compliant.
yeah,
you know,
absolutely non-compliant.
Aisleways are narrow and,
And the only other way to pay for it is on the tax roll.
you know,
Right.
we're trying to make better accessibility for the facilities.
Okay, folks, now, we know that the Baseball Association wants to expand some little section and put in a museum, or, not even really a museum. It's a, do we feel like we have to mention this? Is this,
No.
yeah,
think
right.
it's
because
just an
it's
improvement.
Pretty small and.
It's, yeah, it's just an improvement. And they could decide to use it for something else.
I was
other
in
than a
it the other
museum.
day, and something needs to be done.
Well, and I think too, I think this was, again, not speaking for the Renew Committee, but I think the people on the Renew Committee mentioned to me how impressed they were with the turnout for this particular project and the number of people that were interested in Johnson Park. And so that's something we've got to look at.
I think another thing, you know, we've been chosen for the 2020 games or tournaments, you know, the community has, so whether this can get done in time,
Yeah, that'll be a question.
so.
All right. On to the next, Herman Heights, infrastructure. Everything look okay on that one?
Looks good to me.
Wording right, Ruth Ann?
Yeah, you
There's
okay
not,
with that?
I guess so. I guess so. Well, and then you ask yourself, is infrastructure a term of art for people who, are the city, or, is this, are people who haven't been following this gonna go, what? What are they gonna do? Herman Heights Park infrastructure?
I mean, there's curb and gutter, there's.
No, I know what infrastructure is, but,
but-
is
but
there a
it's trying
different
to-
word, roadway improvements and safety and, but I don't know, maybe I'm,
Would,
It's really access and parking lot.
Yeah, I would
Yeah, right.
consider, if you wanna change the word infrastructure to accessibility.
yeah. Well,
Well, but
or that accessibility is back to ADA,
Right.
people think ADA, I think, Herman Heights Park,
Access.
roadway,
Roadway
it's
access.
the road, it's the road that we're gonna,
Right.
well, that's not really true, it's not really the road.
You're moving the entry into the
Entry,
park,
right.
further,
Right.
west?
Yes.
Yes.
adding parking.
Entrance
And
road.
then putting a
Entrance
parking
road.
lot in there.
Entry, yeah, well, and that's what we're gonna do. Unless it's a little vaguer than that, unless there's, unless there's other things, we're gonna, change the roadway.
do you wanna go with entrance road? I
Entrance
think
road,
most
entrance
users
road.
are familiar with how dangerous that is.
That entrance road, I like that.
They would support that, so.
Do you want to change safety enhancement to improvements? Because we use improvements up at the top for safety improvements, and we use ADA improvements. Do you want to be consistent on improvements rather than
Well,
enhancements?
maybe it's Herman Heights Park entrance road improvements, or safety improvements. I'm losing it. But I don't think we necessarily have to say safety and enhancements, because anybody who's voting knows that it's dangerous to go into Herman Heights Park. We're,
We're coming out.
we're coming up.
Ruth Ann, correct my grammar,
Oh,
will you
come on,
please?
Teacher.
How about improvements to Herman Heights entrance and parking availability?
Oh, I like that, because people who go to Herman Heights know how difficult the parking is.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, what was that again? Could you repeat that?
Oh,
question?
improvements to Herman Heights
But-
entrance?
But that, yeah.
But in keeping with the rest of them, though, you wouldn't
Yeah.
I
want
would
to
say
see improvements.
improvements would be at the end.
Yeah. Herman-
Okay,
Herman
Heights
Heights
entrance
and
and
parking
parking
improvements.
improvement,
Yes.
yeah,
There you go.
there you go.
You name the place, and then you say what you're gonna
Yeah.
do. Got it.
Very good.
That away, Mayor.
Well, see, I knew I needed it corrected.
And then the last thing on the sample ballot that the council has got in front of them had to do with the capital improvements to the airport industrial park, and if that would be deleted.
And I'm
There's been
against that.
discussion about that, that just wouldn't be included.
I would recommend deleting it.
Right.
I deleted it.
We'll remember this in the budget.
Brian better have a good presentation.
Now we need to set the dollar value.
Have a ballot.
Do we still wanna stay at that 13.5 just because?
Or do we wanna go to 15.7 just because?
Might have a little bit more
Toby?
fancy
Uh-huh.
water
I
park.
don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment, if I can, on the dollar amount. We may have added some confusion from the sample ballot we offered. Toby Fryer, 1415 7th Street. So the sample ballot that was in the packet of recommendation had 13.5 million. I think our mindset was that was the capital investment. But when we put together our financing kind of projections and proposal, we actually thought the bonding could be closer to $14.8 million, given the cash flow from the sales tax and being at about 90% of projected sales tax. And the delta, or the difference of the 1.3 million was related to one, cost of issuance, and $1 million of refunding the existing 2009. Because our goal, remember, was let's find the balance of the right capital investment and protecting the capital reserve account. So we weren't going to fully refund those bonds with an early issue out of the capital reserve. It was going to be out of both. New bonds
and 2 some out of the capital reserve. But we had thought about 14.8 million of bonds, 13.5 for investment, $1 million to help pay off the existing bonds, and approximately $200,000 to $300,000 of cost of issuance. That was, and then we thought that would still preserve $3+ million in the capital reserve account and not put too much at risk related to future sales tax with the bonding. So that was sort of the option 4 that John had presented. We were trying to be difficult and come up with one more option to consider, but we spent quite a bit of time on that, wanting to make sure we could find the right balance. So
So
it
the
wasn't 13.5 for the ballot, because then that would say cost of issuance would have to come out of there and any refunding of current bonds.
So what you're clarifying is that the Renew Committee felt that the amount should be 14.8.
14.8 got us to about a 90% ratio of projected sales tax compared to debt service with the interest rates that he recommended, and would still preserve $3+ million and allow for 13.5 of capital investment. That was the formula. Nothing guaranteed, obviously. There's some assumptions made there with interest rates.
And that was if we started it in 2018.
18.
2000, yeah.
Yeah, 2018.
Early.
Okay, thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions on that? Clarification?
Does that work, Roger?
Yeah, you guys will have to set the amounts, and it's.
No, I'm just wondering as far as the.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's
Right.
raised some very valid issues, because
Right.
there are gonna be these additional costs associated with this. And if these are fairly accurate numbers, we're going to be short and have to make up that difference, so.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Toby.
Right.
So,
So you kind of have to go back to option 1, 2, or 3.
what number do we
Well,
like?
I've said all along that the Renew Committee has spent a lot of time and a lot of brain power and a lot of thinking and thoughtfulness on these, and I believe that we should go along with their analysis. Burmeister told us how much time that he had spent with the committee and how many options that they went through. So, I mean, 14.8 would be my recommendation.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
I'll
Rich?
move along for a second.
All right, all right.
So basically, like option 4, you're thinking,
That's, yeah.
is what he had
I
stated,
get-
the one that was on.
But that's the analysis. I mean, we only have to make the ballot question decision right now. But yes, I would move, well, and if we're along, I would rather make a motion for the whole thing.
Right.
Right.
That'd
Yeah,
be
I
my
would-
I would rather
suggestion.
make a motion for the whole thing. And have you been
I've
following
been,
this
you're right,
along?
I've been trying to make the changes to the ballot so that we can identify, there essentially would be 5 projects involved in this, which would include water park and safety improvements to the existing rec center pool, recreation center expansion for indoor playground, wellness center and gymnastics, winter multi-purpose domed facility?
Oh.
Or
No,
just
not
dome?
facility, just dome.
Just
right.
dome.
Johnson Baseball Park, grandstand and ADA improvements, entrance road, or Herman Heights,
Heights.
entrance road and parking improvements. So those would be the projects.
Those are the 5 projects. And the amount, 14.8.
And that would be, for the period beginning between January 1, 2018 and January 1, 2021.
Right.
And ending no later than 20 years thereafter.
Right, and to include the projects and fund reserves for facilities maintenance. I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second? Any more discussion?
Are we missing anything?
Are we missing anything? Well,
We got the
I
wording,
suppose
we got the
we could
projects.
fix it up next time without Counselor Fisher.
Right, but I think, I think, you could review the actual ballot.
What I would suggest,
Yeah.
it's a very good point by both of you. I think if you decide to move forward with these terms,
Mm-hmm.
what I would do would be to revise the ballot so that it's in a clean format that you could approve it, so it's clear exactly what the terms are gonna be, and then it should be within plenty of time to get it to the county, so.
Okay.
And if you had something, Counselor Fisher, that you had concerns about, you could certainly let Brian know, and that
Sure.
can get out to all of us, so we know your opinion on that.
And we could have a super special meeting when you get back.
No, I'll be
Super
back
duper.
too late.
All right. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Thank you, Renew Committee.
Can we
Thank you,
take a
committee
break?
work.
All right, we'll go on to item 5A.
Something easy, like
No
close the
break, huh?
B&L.
Could we take a break? When people used to smoke, we'd take breaks.
Where's Bill Gafford? I didn't need it,
I
huh?
know.
I'm kind of
Just
going
point
into
it
a
out,
nicotine
point it out.
break.
feed.
Could we take a break?
No.
Let's
Keep
go.
going.
All right.
I
All
would,
right, no breaks.
If Brian would've brought some cookies, I would've.
2
but he
more
didn't.
hours.
Brian?
I'll share my Cliff Bar.
Consider resolution authorizing the closure of the alley adjacent to the B&L Bar Building at
Your
15
favorite.
North Minnesota Street and extension of the liquor license into the closed alley area on Friday, July 29th, 2016.
I'll
Offer
offer,
the resolution.
second.
We got a motion, a second to offer resolution, waived reading. Any more discussion?
to be a
I would have some discussion, if I may interject. This would not be a city attorney, but as one of the owners of the building, one building away from the B&L. The concerns I have are these. The agenda item indicates it'd be from 4 PM to 9 PM. The owner's request was from 4:30 to 9 PM. That's a Friday. Our office is open for business until 5. And I would ask that if they're gonna have a band outside, that it not start until 5 PM.
I can live with
Well,
that.
and I think just thinking about other businesses there, I know that in the past, Mr. Jacobs, who owns Jacobs Metal Music, which is also close to this, has voiced objections to this, and I'm certain that they're open till 5 o'clock as well.
Correct,
Yeah.
you know. So I think in the past, you know, they've closed off the alleyway early, but yet allowed him to exit his garage.
And
in.
having
But I don't know about music starting at 5.
Having retrieved 2 schooners from the B&L bar with their logo that were placed on our front doorstep within the last 2 weeks, would ask that the restrictions on the use in the area designated be maintained by the bar. Otherwise, if this kind of request comes again, the council might want to think about those things. So, but otherwise, if you can get the time a little more appropriate, I wouldn't have any
Yeah.
objection to it.
Well, we can change the time here.
I can amend my resolution to
Sure.
go from 5 to 9 PM for the concert and for after business hours.
She seconded.
A second?
I'll
Yep,
second.
that's fine.
We got a motion, a second to offer resolution, waived reading, changing it from 5 to 9. Any more discussion? Seeing none, Finance Director, please call the roll.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Mack,
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
Counselor Webster.
Yes.
President Schmitz.
Yes, motion carries. Item,
May I be excused to get the letter printed out so we can have everybody sign it before you run
oh,
away?
yes, Mayor, you can be.
Oh.
Hurry. Item 5D, consider motion to approve the Spartan ERV contract change order number 1 for an aerial truck as specified in amount of $790.
And what is this about? Is
This
this
is for
something
the fire
important?
It's our $1 million truck.
Our $1 million truck is now $1,790,000.
Yeah, it was $850,000
I
roughly.
Oh.
so
Still under.
It's going up
Still under budget.
1%.
Oh, yeah, a hat, yeah. Half,
I'll offer the motion.
yeah. Second.
Got a motion, a second, any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 5E, consider resolution, to accept donations offered to the City of New Ulm Park and Recreation Department.
I will offer this resolution, waive the reading. These are paver stones and cash for the German Park Amphitheater, which we had hoped to move forward. So I'll offer the resolution that we accept the donations.
Second.
We got a motion and a second offer the resolution, waive reading. Any more discussion? Seeing none, Finance Director, please call the roll.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Mack,
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
Counselor Webster.
Yes.
President Schmitz.
Yes, motion carries. Item number 5F, consider a resolution authorizing the grant application for the Minnesota Amateur Sports Commission for half of the cost of a new electric Zamboni.
I'll offer the resolution, waive the reading on it.
Second.
Got a motion and a second offer resolution, waive the reading.
I'll just note that the Zamboni replacement is part of the revolving fund for next year, so it really isn't a budgetary issue.
And the cost of Zamboni is $140,000 with a $70,000 grant, so we
Right.
get half paid for. That's a pretty good deal. And it's electric, so it won't be that stink in there anymore.
Mhm.
Not that it was that bad of a stink, but a little bit.
Okay. Any more discussion? Seeing none, Finance Director, please call the roll.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Mack,
Yes.
Counselor Schultz. Counselor Webster.
Yes.
President Schmitz.
Yes, motion carries. Item 5G, consider resolution accepting donations and memorials to the New Ulm Public Library.
I'll offer that resolution. Man alive, look at these, how much people love their library.
I'll second.
There's many.
Mhm.
All right, any more discussion? Seeing none, let's see, was that a resolution? Yep. Finance Director, please call the roll.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Mack,
Yes.
Counselor Schultz.
Yes.
Counselor Webster. Counselor Webster.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry, I was
Yes, motion
whispering.
carries. Item 5H, first reading of ordinance number 16-001, fifth series, amending chapter 8 of the city code, City of New Ulm, to opt out of the requirements of the Minnesota statute, section 462 point 3593.
Can-
Roger.
Before, can we?
Well, I think before we
We have to
actually
decide.
read it, we should have a discussion on, do you want him to read it? This is a new law that allows small residential buildings to be placed in the backyards of residential neighborhoods for assisting family members for a period of 6 months, let's say due to a physical ailment where they need care. It can be extended out to up to a year, but then after that, there are no extensions. So, you may be talking about somebody that maybe had a hip replaced, and, it's your mother-in-law, and there's nobody to care for them, and they live in another town. You set this little tiny house up, no more than 300 gross square feet in your backyard. It'd have to be connected to electricity, water, sewer. So this is not a cheap endeavor for potentially a 6-month to a 12-month period of time. Many cities are opting out of this particular requirement because they don't believe that it fits with their residential neighborhood climate where you have double residences and little tiny houses. So the city council, you obviously read the materials, the background on it. The decision would be, is this something you wish to opt out from the state law? And then Mr. Hippert is here prepared to do the first reading if that is your inclination.
I guess I got a question. Have you had a request for this yet, for the building?
This is a
officials?
brand new
This is all brand new.
legislation.
Okay.
And again, I think it's clear from the materials, if you do not opt out, this law will apply to New Ulm.
Don't opt out, it's in.
Right.
Yes. That's how I read it, too.
And I guess when I first read it, I thought, well, yeah, why wouldn't we want to allow this? But when you go into the details of this, there is many stipulations and many things that I don't think that, I
The
think
sewer
that it
part
would
really
be
bothered me probably the
sewer
most.
part, and yeah, I think such a short time, a 6-month, and then you can only, it would be a year. There's just a lot to deal with, but I think that it would be in our best interest to opt out.
I'd be worried about codes, as far as the structure, how's it gonna be fastened or anchored down, if there's tornadoes, weather, conditions, and then it's a whole nother inspection. So I would be for opting out.
And maybe it's just because of my, family situation, but I think that allowing these sorts of temporary arrangements is a good thing. I think that more and more people are going to find themselves in a situation where they have someone that they need to take care of. I'm willing, but on the other hand, I understand that the staff has a lot of questions about whether our city can handle these sorts of things. And maybe we could do something differently. Like you said, when you start reading about all the stipulations, do we really have to just take this one size fits all? And maybe this does fit all the suburbs or all of somebody else. But the question I would have then to the city attorney and maybe the city manager is, by opting out, assuming that the council agrees we should opt out, can the city still look toward drafting some other type of arrangement to allow people to take care of this sort of thing? Because I think the city code right now will only allow like a little camper van or a, like a, what do they call those floating buses that people live in? You can only keep those, you can only, say if a motorhome, you can only have a motorhome for just a few days in front of your house, and then it has to move on. So when I think about this, I think about a motorhome situation where, okay, Uncle Harry needs somebody to take care of him, but he smokes so much you can't stand him to have him in the house. So, but you've got a motorhome. Can you keep him in your motorhome? For 3 or 4 months. I'm sorry. Doesn't everybody have an Uncle Harry?
To the garage.
Up to the garage. But so I guess my question is, I think overall this is actually not a bad idea. So if we opt out of this, can the city, if we do start seeing the need, if the citizens do start seeing the need because of the aging population, can we do something different or similar but different?
I think you'd certainly be free to amend the ordinances any way that you thought were appropriate if there was a need to do so, if you saw that coming up in the future, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Ruth Ann. I think there might be a time where we might want to do something, but maybe now is not.
And I could agree with that. And I'd call it like a dwelling extension or of some sort, but, there's gonna be some guidelines.
Something other than what the state has.
Correct.
But
So go ahead and read it.
well, I think don't we need a?
Well, if we
don't
opt
we?
out, we don't need to read it.
We
right?
don't need to read it.
Yeah, we do. We gotta pass.
I think
Yeah, you have to enact the
we have to-
ordinance
Oh,
to
okay.
opt out.
Oh, okay. all right.
procedurally we have to. I think, but if we have the first, don't we have to actually make a decision to authorize the city attorney to draft the ordinance?
Right, and I think we wanted to get this in because of time constraints. We wanted to
Okay.
get it, make sure it was in front of you.
Okay.
So if someone were to offer the resolution, waive the reading to adopt this ordinance, then I
Okay.
would read it.
Okay. I'll make that
Do that.
resolution. We have the reading.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Finance Director, call the roll.
Oh, we have a question by our.
Oh, we have a question.
This is the first reading on an ordinance.
Oh, so we-
So there needs to be a second reading still.
Sure.
Right.
So the intent is strictly to, for the city attorney, sometimes we'll read the ordinance, sometimes the council you don't take any action at all.
We were required to read it the first time,
Right.
unless it's
Okay.
like.
Don't have to read it.
Yeah, right.
But there's
So
But
if
there's
the
no
council's in
action
support
taken.
of this, then they would ask the city attorney to
Yeah.
proceed and
Yeah.
Right.
read the ordinance.
All right.
Which
So
are-
the
And that's
first,
what we
the
did.
motion would be,
Go ahead and read the
all
ordinance.
in favor of
Of
city
him,
attorney reading
of
the
the
ordinance.
going forward.
So is it a resolution or motion?
It'd be a motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Read.
Go
He's
for
gotta
it.
read it, right?
Ordinance number 16-011, fifth series, City of New Ulm, Brown County, Minnesota. An ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the City Code of the City of New Ulm to opt out of the requirements of Minnesota statutes, Section 462.3593. Whereas on May 12, 2016, Governor Dayton signed into law the creation and regulation of temporary family health care dwellings codified at Minnesota Statute 462.3593, which permit and regulate temporary family health care dwellings, and whereas subdivision 9 of Minnesota Statute, section 462.3593, allows municipalities to opt out of those regulations, be it ordained by the City Council of the City of New Ulm, section 1, that Chapter 8 of the City Code of the City of New Ulm is hereby amended to add the following. Section 8.90, opt out of the requirements of Minnesota Statute, section 462.3593, pursuant to authority granted by Minnesota Statute, section 462.3593, subdivision 9, the City of New Ulm, Minnesota, hereby opts out of the requirements of Minnesota Statute, section 462.3593, which defines and regulates temporary family health care dwellings. The requirements of Minnesota Statute 462.3593 shall not apply within the city's corporate limits. Section 2, that the ordinance shall take effect and shall be enforced 30 days from and after its adoption, approval, and publication.
Thank you. Item 5I, consider motion authorizing the appeal to the City Council of the Heritage Preservation Commission, written order denying the demolition permit for the building located at 513 Minnesota Street, or Center Street, as requested by Bank Midwest.
I would ask that the city attorney talk to us a little bit about the role of the city council as they consider an appeal. This isn't the usual action that a city takes. I'll let somebody who's actually still an attorney talk about what you're doing here, but basically we sit as a quasi-judicial body, and we should be operating in a little bit different way when we hear this appeal. Am I right?
Yes, Councilor Webster, you are. Mr. President and council members, the city code established, or the city established, the Heritage Preservation Commission to oversee the sites that have been designated in the city of New Ulm in part of the Heritage Preservation District, and also specific individual sites. The commission is granted authority under that to review permits for the alteration or demolition of the structures that are located and designated as historic. An application was received by the city by Bank Midwest, who is seeking to relocate from its existing facility on South Broadway into the area by the intersection of Center and Broadway on property that's currently owned by a partnership and occupied by the Barron's Law Office. The city code provides that the Heritage Preservation Commission has got the jurisdiction to grant or deny the permit. The commission considered the application, then went on to conduct a separate public hearing. The code provides that whatever decision it made is to be in the form of an order. The commission voted after the public hearing 4-2 to deny the application to demolish the building. The building in question, excuse me, is a house that was constructed in 1874, which is located at 513 Center Street. It does not apply to the current law office of the Barron's building, which is not included in the historic district. The order that was signed by Ms. Earl as the chairperson of the committee, or the commission rather, was intended to address a number of factors. And as Councilwoman Webster stated, this is a quasi-judicial function in that that body, the Heritage Preservation Commission, was obligated to weigh the information and evidence that it had and to apply it to the guidelines to determine whether the building should be preserved or not. A written order was issued that was served upon the applicant, the bank, I believe this morning, by Elwood Zabel. The bank has filed an appeal to have the council consider this. Under our city code, the provisions on the Heritage Preservation District specifically state that the permit applicant has got the right to appeal the decision of the commission within 10 days of the decision that was issued. And basically, you have the ability to, it says, the code says the city council may modify or overrule the commission's decision, but only if the project is found to be consistent with the U.S. Secretary of Interior's recommended standards for preservation projects. So that is something that would be guiding the way in which you evaluate any information that you receive this evening and make your decision. I think the options available to you have been set forth in the action agenda item, to either affirm the order that was issued denying the application to demolish, or to modify it, or to overrule it. If you are going to overrule it, at least on the record, I think that the council person who's moving, someone should be identifying the reasons why you would be overruling or modifying the decision of the commission, and why that decision would be in accordance with the requirements of the regulations that apply to preservation.
Well, just one other thing. I have spent more time than other people have looking through the Department of Interior's the standards, all right? And I believe that you have as well, all right? And, you know, the two things that, and I don't know who else has. Anybody else spend Sunday afternoon on the Department of Interior Parks Division website? It is, it is. And I came to the conclusion that there's, the regulations themselves describe the regulations as, what language do they use? They're not prescriptive, they are advisory. Most of the regulations are drafted in such a way that if, for example, you're the Grand Hotel and you've got investors who want to take advantage of tax credits, then you must follow these standards. They're prescriptive, they're prescribed, they're necessary to follow them. Other than that, the regulations are advisory, and they talk in terms of what's the difference between preserving something or reproducing something, or, you know, retrofitting, all those sorts of things. There's nothing in any of those regulations about demolishing a building. There's nothing in those regulations about moving a building to another site, because those aren't the types of things that tax credits usually follow. So I think, go ahead.
I think that's correct, Counselor. I think there's also another facet of it, and that is that if you look through the regulations, they go into an awful lot of detail about issues regarding remodeling, repair, maintenance. And I think when you look at our code, the more typical appeal that would come up is someone wanted to change the facade of their building, and the commission said you couldn't do it. And they're arguing about anodized aluminum versus vinyl clad windows. And that came up at the last meeting. So that's the kind of thing that where you could get into a dispute about standards, and there is some specific guidance. A representative of the Minnesota State Historical Society, who deals exclusively with historic preservation issues, attended the public hearing, and I think his point was that generally the purpose of heritage preservation is not to demolish buildings. It absolutely is something that is within the discretion of the commission and this council to agree to demolish the building. It's not like you can't tear it down. But that's, the point is you're going to try and preserve things. He came up with 3 factors that he indicated were appropriate for considering this, and those were presented to the commission before they decided it. The first one was whether or not the building itself is contributory to the district. In other words, is it historic? Is it an old building? Does it have unique features? And there was evidence presented about that. The second thing is whether or not the building and structure itself presents a threat or a health risk. Is it in danger of collapsing, falling down, injuring persons or property? Mr. Zabel made an inspection of the property. I think he determined that it was not in that kind of condition. And the third factor is whether or not it has any economic use whatsoever. And that would mean any use, if it's rehabilitated or not, any type of business, residence, any useful purpose. And I think they determined that the commission determined that it would. That's the information that appears in the order. So to the extent you'd be looking at guidelines, those would seem to be legitimate things to be considering.
You know, one thing that took me a little while to just sort of get my head around was the idea that this building, the demolition of this building is, a permit is required for the demolition of the building, not because of the building itself, but because it's within the district and is considered to be a contributory building, because it was built in 1874, and it was described in the application in 2005. It was one of the buildings that was described in the application. So, and I've toured that building, you've toured that building. Who else has toured the building?
I've toured the building.
You've toured the building. And I did not attend the preservation public meeting or any of the hearings. But having toured the building and having looked at an aerial view of the building, and also reviewing the application, where the application refers to that building as just the actual old brick building. That's, what are the dimensions of it?
I think it's 24 by 30.
24 by 30. And I was, now the demolition permit was asking to remove that contributory building. It's that there are other structures on that lot. When I looked at how to describe this property, lot 1 is the parking lot, lot 2 is the parking lot, lot 3 is the main portion of Barron's Rodenberg and what was the Sportsman's Cafe and that sort of thing. Then when you move over to lot 4, there are structures on lot 4 that are not the 1874 building. There's that sort of plexiglass, little structure with the stairways that go up and the little canister 1960s type lights. And then behind that are 2 secretarial bays that are part of the Barron's Law Office. Now, that wasn't described as being a portion of 513 Center Street in the application. And I'm wondering if when the commission sat, whether they determined that the plexiglass portion cannot be demolished and the secretarial bay cannot be demolished, or did they?
The chairman of the commission is present, and maybe she could address that.
Ann Earl, 509 North German. Hi. The plexiglass enclosure and the other structures on the exterior of the building can be removed because they are not part of the original building. We're talking about the exterior, the National Register status and the local designation is the exterior of the brick building that exists there.
And what about the various additions on the back?
Those are not, I don't believe that those are original to the structure.
Doesn't look like it.
No. So it has to be, we talk about the original brick structure.
So the intent of the commission, whose decision is being appealed, is only to prevent the demolition of the original building.
Correct. That's correct.
So we know what's being.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the National Register speaks only to the building shell itself. We do not concern ourselves with the interior of the building.
Thank you.
Anybody have any comment? I guess the only comment I got is if they can demolish every part of it except that 24 by 30, what sense does it make to leave that? I mean, we're talking putting in a $4 million expansion in this city, and the jobs it's gonna create, everything else, to save something that's gonna have no value whatsoever, to me, just doesn't make any sense. I don't know if that's legally what we can do, but my God.
The applicant is here tonight, Mr. President, and I'm sure they can,
I think.
as well as the owners, but my understanding throughout this has been that the only reason the building has to come down is because that's the design for the driveway to get to to their drive-through and some parking. Mr. Schnobrick pointed out for the commission that they could move that curb cut and save the building. And I think the applicant will indicate that that might cost them some spots in line, but my understanding is it's not like if this building at 513 stays, they're not gonna put their bank there. So it's not an either-or situation.
Well.
No, I maybe agree with that, but I guess, sorry, I don't see any reason to leave it.
Okay, I didn't understand if you knew that.
I just think
Okay.
we need to me, it's more interesting for the community to get some businesses in town here, to maintain our downtown, the structure, the looks is just great. I think we need to do as much as we can, but I think it's more important to have employment and everything else in this community than to sit around and worry about what that one building is gonna do to this community. We have the whole downtown yet. I mean, it isn't on Main Street. I guess that's where I'm coming from. My opinion is let's get it down and let's get on with progress.
I think, Ruth Ann, you know what the current value of the
Yeah,
house is?
like I said, I spent more time, and this is what happens to retired people. I apologize for this, but I went up to the county assessor's office and asked that, you know the type of information when we sit as a board of adjustment, and they value that building at $22,400. That's the value that they give to that building, and that's the entire building. That's the plexiglass structure, that's the 2 secretarial banks, that's the additions.
When you tear off the stairway on the side, you got no way to get up.
You
ain't
can't
got no
get up
value
there.
to it.
I know that. I know
There's
that.
no purpose anymore.
I know.
I guess when we had that meeting, I sit on that commission, and when we had that meeting, it was split. There was 4 that wanted to deny that permit, and there was 2 of us that voted for the demolition. And one of the things that I was really looked at is that, yes, the outside of the building is pretty sound, and it looks nice where it's at. But what's gonna happen to that building, and who's gonna use it? And there's nobody stepping up to say that they want that building or that there's a purpose for that building. And are we keeping a building for, that isn't gonna have a purpose and that's gonna sit there? You know, if there was a plan for that building, if somebody was stepping up and saying they wanted to use that building in that spot, I'd be more than happy to say, let's keep it. but the bank doesn't want it, the current owners don't want it. Who's gonna take it over? Is it gonna just sit there and be an eyesore in a few years, and they're gonna come back to us again and say, now it's crumbling, let's demolish it?
And part of my concern with that building, from looking at the design, that there's no way to get to the upstairs, no way to get to downstairs. So if you're going to try and use it in a commercial setting, it's near impossible, because you can't add to the you can't change the facade of the building. Like Ms. Earl said, it's the building, it's the structure of the building that they're protecting. And that's almost a nemesis, because it's gonna cause the problem, because you can't fix it. So,
And the other thing that, because you, in order to use that building, right now the building is usable because it's attached to a building that has ADA accessible, you know, you can get in and out of it. But once the additions are taken off, then if somebody's going to use it, as a business, because it's part of it's part of the downtown business, you'd have to make it ADA compliant. And I don't know how you could put, that would be very difficult. It would just
I
difficult.
don't think you could.
It would be difficult. It's difficult to take down a historic building. It always is. But I came to the conclusion, after looking at the building, and after studying the project and that sort of thing, that I would not support, keeping the building. I think we should, because we're here, I would like to hear, I'd like the people who are listening to hear from the bank what their plans are, so that we have it on the record.
they're the ones that are filing the appeals. So
And
they
they're the
should-
ones that
they
are
should have a
filing the
voice
appeal.
today.
Right. Name and address for the record.
Shannon Hillisheim, 1437th North. I'd be happy to tell our story. Bank Midwest has been in town now for 11 years, and they're a citizen of this community as well, and they've demonstrated that. We have spent $200,000 in the course of the time we've been here into this community. But we've grown, which is good, but we've added staff, and we're out of space, and we're in 2 separate locations. It's always been our mission to find a location to combine our banking and our wealth and insurance services under one roof. You can't be efficient and you can't grow in 2 locations. But you can imagine how difficult it is to find a location that will house a 7,000 square foot building with a drive-through and parking. And we have explored options. We wanted to stay downtown. That's where we are. We feel that's our best spot. We looked at another location, and I thought we'd maybe go there, and then as we worked with the architect, it just wasn't big enough. And then we started cutting back the size of the building, and if we're gonna invest that kind of money, we wanna make sure that we've got room to grow. Gone are the days where a bank has a few tellers and a lender, maybe some operations people. There's marketing people in IT and HR, and there's lots of job opportunities within a bank now. And so when we found out about the Barron's location, that was kind of the answer, and we were thrilled. That's a great location, and we didn't realize the significance of this little house on the back. We walked around, and I said it before, if they had shown us this property and there sat the Wanda Gog house, we wouldn't be here tonight. This was a house that they have stated they've never intended to keep. It needs a lot of work to fix. But here's what I know. This new bank isn't just good for Bank Midwest. It is good for the community. As President Schmidt stated, it's a $4 million investment that Bank Midwest wants to make into this community. And that's huge. It's $4 million for local contractors and businesses in this town. I took calls all day yesterday when this came out from contractors wanting to get on our list for bids, and well, it's a little premature, but I'm excited that we've got that sort of response. It also is a larger tax base here for this city, and we're not coming in and asking for city and county help. We're gonna just fund this investment ourselves. but we're coming up to some time constraints. You know, our plan is to take over this building in September and to begin demo so that we're closed up for the winter and we can be in there next summer. And we've already been set back a little bit, so we need to keep this moving. So I really appreciate your time tonight to help us with that. We also know that MnDOT will not let us have a cutout on Broadway. We have tried and they won't allow that. So we've got to enter in and out here on Center Street, or we're landlocked. Ideally, with working with our architect, it is to come in where the house sits. It'll give us enough room to move in and out easily with that drive-through and get back out on Center Street without having congestion. Yes, we've heard that 100 feet is all MnDOT really requires from Broadway, but we know the reality of how many cars we can have in a drive-through and what's feasible to get in and out. Ideally, that would be the spot that we need. We also know that we're federally regulated, so for us to come in and try and improve this property is to the tune of over $250,000, because we have ADA requirements we have to follow and the history codes we'd have to follow, and for what purpose? Because we don't need that structure. Barron's doesn't need that structure. We don't know what to do with it if we were to come in and try and fix it up. So we're presented a challenge, and that's why we came before the Preservation Committee, and my goal that night was to try and find a compromise. How could we use some of the windows in that house or some of that Italian architect and bring that into our bank? Maybe we use it in the greeter station when you walk in, a plaque or something to commemorate what that house once stood for. Someone mentioned green space. It doesn't have to all be parking in that area. We certainly can work with the city if green space and a bench and helps draw that in and keep that charm we have in New Ulm. We're more than willing to work with you on that. You know, I have roots in town here too, just like many of you, and I get how important the history is. But what's just as important as the history is the story of the history. It doesn't have to mean that we save every piece of property, but how can we make sure that we're recreating and preserving those stories for our future generations? We have a museum. We have an exhibit, exhibits in the museum that maintain our history that Bankman West has supported heavily to keeping those stories alive. And so that's why we're asking you to please reconsider the HPC's decision and to let us move forward, because this is good for New Ulm, and it's good for job opportunities and so forth.
I have a question, Ms. Hillesheim. Now, you were here when John Burmeister was going over our bond rating, and he pointed out that Moody's looks at our two credit challenges as being a small tax base and basically lower people having more low-paying jobs. So I've got questions about that. Now, approximately what is it, are you going to be spending to put a new bank up, new financial institution?
Our estimated costs are $4 million to create this building.
Okay.
You know, and from there, it's jobs and it's the businesses that we finance.
Sure. And so you're planning to put up a $4 million building. Okay. And so that's what I wanted to know, what it would be adding to the tax base. And how many jobs are you planning to have in this downtown location? And would you describe those as professional type jobs or I don't mean low paying or high paying, but just looking at it as an average job, how would you describe the level of pay that those jobs would have?
Well, we've added 2 already. With the growth we've had, we couldn't wait, so we've added, and we are office sharing right now and trying to make things work. In the new location, in addition to filling those offices, those people in those, we have 2 for sure, and those would be lender type positions. I will need another lender, and so those are good jobs.
Those are
Professional.
professional jobs, require a college degree? Okay,
Mhm.
so then total, how many people do you think would be working in this downtown location? This new downtown, when you get everybody together? A
When we-
dozen, 14?
When we combine 10, 12 people
12,
when we
okay.
combine,
Mhm.
and 2 or 3 more, we could handle for sure in there,
Mhm.
and, you know, with room to make adjustments if we need to.
Mhm. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for her?
I don't really have any questions. I just like to state a couple of things. You know, I attended the meeting on Wednesday, the public hearing, and I also served on the HBC commission back in 2006 when we designated this property. And I do remember, you know, Mr. Boyle coming and speaking, I don't want this property designated. You know, we chose it as a commission because of the style of the architecture. We wanted to include it, you know. In the last 10 years, no improvements have been done to the building either. I did go through the building. I did approach Bank Midwest with an option. And they asked about moving it ever. They hadn't. I said, I got a lot a block away. That's why I'm gonna abstain from the vote tonight. I feel it's worth saving. That's just my opinion. And then what about saving would be the 24 by 30 and try to work with it. If they would work with me and partner with it, you know. There were some conversations. We don't know what numbers are. We don't even know if it's even viable to move structurally yet. You know, people have been called, you know, so I just, tonight being here, I don't think we need to just rush into this. I don't want to put a delay on Bank Midwest. I mean, they can go ahead and tear everything else down, but I'm thinking, let's do some more due diligence, maybe wait 3 months. That puts it out to say October.
abstain,
You could
he's
still
got to
demo the
abstain.
building in October. You know, that's just my thoughts. I don't know if that's feasible here tonight.
Well, but you'd be abstaining regardless.
I'm abstaining regardless, so.
So then I would have a question for the city attorney, which is, you know, I know the conclusion I came to, but I believe that the same process that would allow Bank Midwest to demolish the building would have to be gone through in order to allow them to move it someplace else, right? You know, so it's really a horse apiece.
Correct.
You know, lifting it up and moving it someplace is the same as demolishing it.
And correct, you know.
From just a technical point of view.
You know, another whole thing is, will the HPC allow it to be moved out of the historic district? It's a block out of the district, you know, so then we have to go back to the state, and there's a lot of technical things here which is gonna need some due diligence, you know, so.
I think that's something that has, Mr. Mack has indicated this is a concept that might work in the past. And I think the commission is aware of it. I think there've been some inquiries that have been made. I don't think the commission would be adverse to an application to relocate it. That might be possible to still designate it as historic. There's 40% tax credits, which have not been mentioned as far as the expenses to rehabilitate the building, but it needs to be designated as historic, and you probably have to reapply to do that. So there are some other options out there.
Well, but what's before us today? What's before us today is an appeal. And I've already made my point. I mean, we have to look at the city as a whole. And to add to the tax base and have these kinds of jobs downtown is just very important. I also spent quite a bit of time, I downloaded the PDF of the registration form. You know, when in 2005, Mr. Hoisington put together the form asking that this historic district be put together. You know, on the second page, it says, what are the historic functions? And one of the historic functions is financial institution. So at least, you know, to my way of thinking, you know, the purpose of putting together this goal of, you know, saving our downtown was to make sure that we had people who wanted to come downtown, who wanted to live downtown, who wanted to, spend their money downtown. So it should look nice. It should be an improvement over the empty Red Owl parking lot that is sitting there right now, you know what I mean? So, I just think that allowing, a bank to build what looks like a lovely, modern building that might in 85 years be worth saving makes sense for the larger goal of having a vibrant downtown. I think that's much more important than saving a little 24 by 30 building whose architectural features, if you look at them, are replicated in United Prairie Bank. When you read the application, the architecture is the little crenellated stuff and the keystones. And so I'm driving up to my bank, United Prairie, and I'm going, oh my gosh, it looks the same. It's so as far as, like I said, it's a historic structure. I'm certain that it was probably the right decision to include it, but under the circumstances, it just makes sense to move it away in one way or another to allow us to increase our tax base overall, add several jobs, downtown jobs. It just makes sense to me.
So you can offer a motion to overrule?
I think that we have to determine, attorney, what kind of findings do we need to make?
For one thing, at this point, there's quite a few people.
Oh,
It's a very late meeting.
We need to keep hearing. We
We've
need to
been
hear.
Here for quite a while. A lot of people have stayed.
Okay.
And I don't know,
How much testimony do we need to take?
well, you'll decide when to
All
cut
right.
it off, but
All right.
it might be appropriate
I'm
to
here.
have some.
Would it be all right if I just speak to Mr. Mack's
Yes.
comment? Okay, because we have been in discussions, and I too was like, if, again, our whole purpose of going in front of the Preservation Committee was to try and find that compromise. What I've been told is, if the demo permit is allowed, Bateman West has control over that property, and so we can demo it or we could move it. If we don't have control over that property, then we're back to the whole, how do we get it moved, what process, and as we've kind of heard, the due process, that whole, on what's allowed in moving and demoing is not very clear. A lot of things, and we need to keep moving forward, so that could really hinder our progress. That being said, and I don't want to speak out of context, but I would think that we would still work with Mr. Mack to see, we take over in September. We still have time. I've gotten some costs, I'm just waiting on one more for him. If we can make this work, absolutely, that's what we're going to do.
And you'd work with anybody.
Or anybody to get this property
Mr. Mack
moved.
has removed himself from the
Right, I'm
discussion
just,
because of the
with
conflict.
anybody we would be, we just need to know that end game so we can keep moving forward. And, from talking to contractors, it would be really nice if we could still move forward in September, so we're closed up for the winter. So that's, I guess,
Your timeline is, you would like to do the demo
In
very quickly
September.
in September.
But you've got a lot of things to demo that aren't involved here.
Yeah, you
they aren't, it's just becomes, if we're saving it, the demo process is a little differently. And the curb cutout will be different. There's some of those things to keep in mind. So, thank you.
Thank you.
So what we're saying is we could actually approve the demolition, and she could still do what she wanted to.
Then
in the next 30
it's her
days or
property.
whatever, to keep her on schedule where she's headed to.
Right. I think then the question becomes, because we're sitting as a quasi-judicial body, do we need to hear any, in order to make the determination that we need to make, that either it's not contributed not contributory to the district, that it's a health or safety risk, or that it really has limited or no economic use as a business or a resident, do we need to hear any more additional information? We've heard from two people, or two sides. The chair told us, Ms. Earl told us, that their ruling was only on the actual building, which.
Counselor, it didn't address the merits of the question,
No,
or
no.
the comments that she made.
No.
Nor is anyone else at this point. And you can decide to make your decision right now, if you want to.
Okay.
There are a lot of people who have waited here and may have something to say. It's up to you if you want to hear that or not. They may speak in favor of it, they may speak against it. But at this point, I don't know that there's been any information presented to you this evening representing why the decision was made to deny the application.
Well, we have the findings, we have the findings.
That's your call. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're comfortable that that's
Yeah.
sufficient, that's your decision to make.
Well, how much of a record do you think that we need to make? Do you, you know, several of the things that I referred to, are they considered the record? So the application, the 2005 application, is that considered part of our record, or?
I think, yes, I think it would be. I think there's three people who are by the microphone who are waiting to speak right now. So there are people who would like to be heard.
Value of the
but
building.
It's your decision.
The value of the building is a matter of public record, you know. There's our chair.
You wanna let him speak or not? It's up to you.
We can. I don't want to drag the meeting out forever. If we give everybody 2 minutes to say what they got to say. Just come up to the mic, state your name and address for the record.
Ann Earl, 509 North German, Chair of the HPC. Previously, when I spoke, you asked a question
Yes,
that I
I did.
answered. I didn't really mean to address
No.
the fact that we don't consider the property itself historically important. We certainly do. It was assigned to the local district by a lot of time and effort and work, and it was also approved by the council at that time. So obviously, it had some significance. The bank could work around this building, and it could be at least temporarily saved until it's reviewed and considered more by the council. There's also, since it is a federal property, the federal banking system is involved, they do have to go through the state. There are some other applications, I think, that have to be made to demolish a National Register building. So I just want to point that out also.
Anybody else?
Hello, my name is Lee Weber. I live at 10 South Washington in New Ulm. There's a point I wanted to make that I really haven't heard discussed here, is that, you know, Bank Midwest has their design for a brand new bank. It's part of their trade dress, part of their corporate identity. And I understand that. But the purpose we have a historic district is to make it part of our civic identity. And a great number of people in this town gain some benefit from a tourist trade and from our historic identity. So what I see this as is a trade-off, is that they want us to damage, to a certain extent, our identity, our trade dress, in order to enhance theirs. It's not just the building that we're talking about. If you have a historic district and a historic preservation commission, if you don't support them, it really has no purpose. And I understand this is considered a peripheral building by many people, but it's also part of the process. And I understand a sense of urgency on the part of the business people, but it's also part of the civic responsibility of the commission and of the council. And these decisions have to be made deliberately and with due deliberation. And so I'm happy with the process that we've seen here, and I think it has value for the whole community to make this decision with a lot of deliberation rather than in a hurry. So thank you for your consideration as well. But when we look at the historic nature of the downtown, where do you draw the line? If you can't support the Historic Preservation Commission under this circumstance, when will you? When is it asking too much of the community in terms of its own trade dress or its own identity on the next issue or the next thing that comes up? So I want you to consider that in your considerations, because this has implications beyond just the building or just this particular project. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Brian Toll, Economic Development Corporation. I'm strongly in favor of historic preservation. But for this particular building, the financial viability, and we talked about some of the Department of Interior criteria, the financial viability of using this building doesn't exist. To put 250, or if you're moving it 300,000 into that, what are you gonna have to charge for that little teeny building to recoup that investment and make a reasonable profit? So I think that's the hat we can hang this on. And not to mention that the fact that we've got an existing New Ulm business that's willing to put $4 million into our community to add to the tax base and create new jobs. So I encourage you to grant the demolition permit.
Okay.
I just wanted to say one other thing. Part of the consideration that I made was the fact that this little tiny building has not really, except for it being attached to Barron's Rodenberg, has not really been part of the downtown community. It's not been an integral part. It's not something that if you talk to anybody who grew up there, they'd say, oh, gosh, the Center Street building, I remember it. What people remember is the Sportsman's Cafe, which is, which is a historic building, but in a different era, because the historic, the time frame here for the historic preservation ended in 1953. So I do want to express support for the preservation of important buildings downtown. I don't think this sets up. I don't think we're on a slippery slope here. I don't think anybody should take that away from the decision that we make.
Do we have a motion?
I don't know if it's a motion, but what I wanted to say is, with regard to the economic use of the building, like I said, right now it's essentially a little attachment to the Barron's office, and once all those other things are taken away, this building really is not a useful building. You can't get in, you can't get into it except up 4 or 5 stairs. You can't get into the upstairs without the little plexiglass thing. And I don't really think it's been contributing to the district. It hasn't really been used in a way that has been contributing to the district. This may or may not be something that Mr. Coop made sense, that would make sense to Mr. Coop, but just the uniqueness of this particular site. Like I said, you've got lot 1, lot 2, lot 3 that are basically going to be, that are not part of the district. And you've got somebody who wants to buy lot 4 as well to put up a financial institution, which was part of the original use of the historic district. I think that's a very unusual combination. I mean, I don't know if I'd feel differently if somebody wanted to put up a greenhouse or something like that, but I just think it fits. I think it really fits. It's a unique situation. And perhaps you can work it out to save some portion of the building, but that's not what's before us today. What's before us today is whether we should overrule the decision of the Heritage Preservation Commission and direct the appropriate officials to issue a permit to demolish that building at 513 Center. And I believe that on this record, we have enough evidence to do that. So if you think we need a motion,
I think so.
that's my
Well, I think
motion.
you need a motion,
Yeah.
and the motion, if that's the intent, it needs to include that the demolition is consistent with the U.S. Secretary of the Interior's recommended standards for preservation projects.
I would move, I would make that motion, and that is consistent with, remind me of that language again.
That the demolition is consistent with the U.S. Secretary of the Interior's recommended standards for preservation projects.
That's my motion, for the reasons that I stated, you know. Like I said, I think it's, I don't think it's got enough economic use. I don't think it contributes to the district, and I think it's really a unique situation, a one-of-a-kind situation, where we got we're gonna be putting just exactly the type of business that went in the historic business district in a place that's really been underutilized.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
I've been kind of quiet on this, but.
Maybe just adding more confusion to the whole
Oh, good.
situation.
Here comes the mayor.
Sorry about that.
I
But I've been receiving a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails on both sides. And I've even been told, why even have a Heritage Preservation Commission?
Oh,
Kind of angrily, but that's okay. I can take a few of those. But what I think happened is several years ago, when this commission was actually formed by the city council, it was because we lost the old Citizens Bank, which is a beautiful looking building. I don't know what the interior was or anything else, but we lost that. We lost the Dakota Hotel completely. We lost Emerson School. We lost St. Alexander's Home. We lost innumerable historic buildings, and that's why the Historic Preservation Commission was formed. However, what has been said tonight is also very valuable to the city, and I'm looking at a building that I questioned putting my signature on for being designated a historical building, and that's the, what do you want to call it? The old high school, the middle school, the whatever center you want to call it. Right now, that building is sitting sealed up, at least I think it is. I've been told the doors are open, and sometimes there's people going in and out at all times of the day and night. But those are rumors, and New Ulm's good at rumors. What's happening to our paintings that are owned by the federal government in a building that has, well, in case you haven't figured it out from the weather report, we're going to have a lot of humidity coming real soon. So what's going to happen to that building that has no air movement? In the pictures that we had, the building that's in question had fans in them, and I even believe I saw a window air conditioner. So if there were people working in that building, the air was moving. If nobody's going to be working in the building, is that just going to add to the deterioration of the building? And that's something that you guys have to weigh heavily on, both sides. Thank you.
I'll keep my comments brief because it's getting late. We did get a letter from the chamber that represents 340 businesses supporting Bank Midwest moving forward with the demolition. So I wanted to point that out. I'm going to vote for this request, but I would want to highly encourage Bank Midwest to follow through with their comments about doing what they can to preserve the structure of that, to preserve that building and pieces of it, like you mentioned. I'm really gonna push you to do that, and I almost would like to include it in the motion, but I can't, because there's already been a second. But, and I think you will. Based on what you said, I really do honestly believe that you've been good stewards in our community. This is a huge project that you can include a variety of different things, whether it be some of the architecture, some of the windows, whatever that might be to make your building look appropriate. Obviously, it's got to fit with your design, but so I'm going to really encourage you to carry forth that effort. Maybe it's some donations to the library, maybe it's some, like I said, some pictures within your own bank or whatever, but I really would encourage you to follow through with that. So that's my comment. And I'll call the question. Getting late.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. But no more business, meeting adjourned.
This might have been a sidewalk.